Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting for March 2021. Welcome, Council, staff and members of the media. David in the gallery, thank you for joining us. I'll now declare the meeting open at 9:01 a.m. I don't believe we have any apologies or any requests for leave due to absence. So we'll now hand over to Councillor Duff to perform the recognition of the traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge St Patrick's Day. Today is the 17th of March and it's St Patrick's Day, and it's great that Councillor Shoemaker is also wearing a bit of green, and I've gone to the trouble of putting green on because the Duffs are Irish, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff, and yes, happy birthday, happy St Patrick's Day to everyone across the South Burnett. Okay, item 4 is declarations of either declarable or prescribed conflicts of interest. Councillors, got the agenda there in front of us for today's committee meeting. Does anyone have a conflict of interest they're concerned about that they'd like to raise? Councillors, I do have one myself. At item 7.3, there's the Gordon Brook Dam proposal, which is from the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club. I just want to disclose to Council that my sister's husband is the Vice President, Wayne Weir, and Jason Wyeth, who is the Secretary, his son works for my accounting firm, Young Patrick. So, councillors, I'm just not sure, Mr CEO, if that would constitute a declarable conflict of interest.
That's a good question, Mayor. Could you? Sorry, I'm just making notes. Could you just repeat the two reasons? Sorry, my apologies.
Again. So my sister's brother is the Vice President of the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club, and my Jason Wyeth, who's the Secretary, his son works for our accounting firm. My sister's husband, yes, my brother-in-law is the Vice President, and my employee's father is the Secretary of the club. So treading carefully with conflict of interest these days. Happy to make it a declarable and leave it to Council if you think that's safe.
Probably wise.
Yes. So in light of the fact that these new laws are a little bit vague for all of us, I might just declare that as a declarable conflict of interest and leave it to Council to resolve as to whether I should be staying in the room and participating in the meeting. So we can deal with that straight away, and I might, unless there's any other conflict of interest matters, councillors. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think it's a declarable conflict of interest, but I'd just like to note that I am a member of the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Mr CEO, I'm sure that would...
Yeah, membership, as long as it was originally you did have the conflict when you were a board position, but that was...
but I resigned from the
board,
executive, and now I am just...
membership isn't a conflict.
Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce.
Yep. No, we'll note it, but yeah, membership's not a conflict. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. So, councillors, if there's no other disclosures in relation to item 4, I'll now leave the room, hand over to Councillor Jones, Deputy Mayor Jones, to preside over my declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 7.3. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll open it up for discussion. The Mayor has declared a declarable conflict or a perceived conflict, either or, on item 7.4 this morning in regards to 7.3, sorry. So I'll open it up to the floor to have any conversation or comments in regards to that. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. I think that the Mayor would be, in my opinion, should be able to stay in the room. I don't think that the matters that he has raised are of enough significance to warrant him not being able to make an unbiased decision.
Thank you, councillor. Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
I move accordingly that he be allowed to stay in the room.
Somebody want to second that? Councillor Potter? No other further comments?
Just, councillor, just to clarify, because we are now picking up the reasons why councillors, so it's basically can exercise judgment in the public good, and the public good is greater than the conflict, and that's pretty much where your reasoning? Yep.
Yes, CEO Mark.
And it's probably, it is an information report, so there is no action from it as well, so we'll note that in the minutes.
The resolution that we have in front of us, moved by councillor Duff, seconded by councillor Potter, the council resolved that Mayor Otto has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter, and notwithstanding the conflict, Mayor Otto may participate in the matter, discuss and vote upon it. All in favour? Carried, unanimous. Thank you. Someone grab the mayor.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Okay, on to item 5.1, which is the minutes of the February Standing Committee meeting, and they can be found at 20 on the agenda. So the recommendation is that the minutes be received. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thanks, councillor Froeloff. Councillors, any questions or comments in relation to the minutes? Any observations there? No? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 6.2, meeting reports, meetings, reports and timelines at 26. Oh, sorry, my portfolio report, 6.1. Sorry, I do that every meeting, don't I? I always miss one item. It's at page 20, so. Okay. Well, thank you, Linnell, for keeping me on track there, and it's my pleasure to now present the Social and Corporate Performance, People and Culture, Communications, Media, Finance and ICT Portfolio Report for the month of March 2021. And with recent resignation, vacancies in a couple of positions and a number of pressure points within sections of the Social and Corporate Performance branch, as well as a renewed focus on customer service through the adoption of the Customer Service Charter last month, it was timely to realign the branch functions, matching how we effectively deliver services to the organisation and external customers. To effectively align functions to policy, the branch has undergone a name change from Social and Corporate Performance to Corporate Services. The name change means a better fit with the functions delivered within the Finance and Corporate Department, and more appropriately excludes the social performance elements which transitioned from the branch to the Community Department late last year. Further, the Customer Contact section has been renamed to Customer Service, reflecting the strengthening of the policy direction of building relationships with our customers in a customer service focused approach. Regarding the other sections of the branch, we have renamed and transitioned records management to be included within the broader governance function, combining records management responsibilities with corporate governance functions such as delegations, corporate registers, information access scheme, right to information, information privacy applications, and processing. Through extensive internal consultation, the branch is now well positioned to drive positive change through customer service, corporate governance, corporate risk, and audit functions. And could I just congratulate and thank our senior executive team for the work that you've done in the renaming and restructuring of that. It certainly does more appropriately align with Council's priorities moving forward, and is clearly a positive move in the right direction. In terms of people and culture generally, we've had 8 trainees confirmed commencing with Council on the 29th of March 2021, with a further 2 trainees confirmed to commence in April. Council also employs 3 apprentices So again, to our People and Culture team and to our senior executive, thank you for supporting the employment of trainees and apprentices across our region, a significant contribution from Council to the development of the skill sets of the people in the South Burnett. In communications and media, in February, the Media and Comms team progressed the following: 22 media releases, 18 media inquiries, 55 Facebook posts. We had the most popular was the South Burnett Aquatic Centre closure and renovations, which reached 7,556 users, 249 engagements and 2,242 post clicks. Council's South Burnett Region Facebook page ended the month with 7,945 likes, up 22 likes from January, and 8,224 followers, up 20 followers from January 2021. We had 4 LinkedIn posts, and the most engaged post was on the 2nd of February, the KTP full commencement of works, with 685 impressions, 265 clicks, 2 shares, and 0.26% engagement rate. Moving through to Instagram, we had 12 posts. Most engaged post was again on the 2nd of February, the KTP full commencement of works map. Just skipping through to printed advertising, Council progressed 2 full-page ads in the South Burnett Today during February, being on the 4th and the 18th. 1 public notice found with 1 cow and calf on the 25th of February, and we also progressed 1 full-page ad in the Morgan Moments for what's on at South Burnett Libraries, and a half-page ad for the region's dams. Graphic design, we had a fact sheet based on home-based food businesses, and Tech2 platform login screen and background graphics. Which is, of course, a very important initiative. A list of all media release inquiries and stats for February is available as an attachment to this report. In terms of finance, finance has completed the 3rd quarter budget revision, and this review saw no overall change to the net operating deficit of $4.561 million. There was, however, a reduction in the net result due to capital grant revenue of $4.7 million being pushed into the 21-22 and 22-23 years. Most of the capital grant reduction was surrounding the expected receipt of the Building Better Regions funding. The capital expenditure program was also reassessed as part of the review, with $8.49 million being removed from this financial year and reallocated to future years where needed, including a portion that was directly related to the grant revenue deferral. Finance continues to work on the preparation of the 21-22 budget, as well as beginning to identify the potential bad debt write-offs that may need to occur for the end of the financial year. The rates team are currently in their busy period and have completed 148 rate searches and 420 customer requests for the month of February. A total of 15 undetected water leak applications have also been processed in the month, and February also saw 156 transfers received from the Department of Natural Resources and Mines. The discount period for the current rate cycle closed on the 16th of March, which was yesterday, and during March the rates team will be commencing with the next step for the sale of land for rates in arrears, and I must point out that they are very much long-term rates in arrears to which they are attending. And can I just acknowledge the work that our rates team have done in getting out thousands and thousands of rates notices, and also our customer services team in attending to our customers. The foyers in our customer service centres, including Kingaroy, have been absolutely full of people over recent days, and they've done a wonderful job in servicing those ratepayers. In terms of procurement, our procurement's in the process of developing specifications for the establishment of a preferred supplier arrangement for pre-mixed concrete, and Council will be inviting offers on the sale of baled Rhodes grass hay in large square bales and round bales from the irrigation area at the Kingaroy Water and Wastewater Treatment Plant. Procurement has worked alongside the Senior Recreations Services Officer to seek expressions of interest from not-for-profit community organisations for the acquisition of the surplus mountain bikes originally sourced under the successful Get On Your Bikes state government-funded program initiative conducted along the rail trail as per Council's resolution. Council, it's now my pleasure to move that my portfolio report be received for information. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, questions, comments in relation to the report? Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, now we'll move to 6.2, meetings, reports and timelines at 26. And Mr CEO, would you be so kind as to give us an introduction to such? Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. It's literally an information report for today, and then we'll seek some, I'm quite hopeful of some discussion around a couple of the items. It's a refresher, just the conduct of council committee meeting policy. That's a copy attached to the report, as well as the meeting timelines. We've had some inquiries again just recently about getting agenda items on. We had this last meeting was the first spin out of the late agenda process, and a late item would have to be one of considerable either urgency or need, particularly with the standing committees now running 4 meetings a month. We can move with a little bit of a degree of flexibility. It is important that people get information in on time as best as we can. We've got 3 days in there. Conversations with people about we would dearly love to get the agenda out on Thursdays. The difficulty with getting it out on Thursdays is literally getting the material in. So Friday now we've set our own target, which is above the regulations of Friday night, so the full agenda. We actually don't need to publish the full agenda until the Monday online, but we do that Friday night as part of, so as soon as the councillors get it, the full agenda with the background papers goes out on Friday night. There's community engagement day. There's been a fair discussion on that. We actually already carry the head of power. I'll use the term workshop as a traditional term, but call them community engagement days. So in discussions with the mayor, the first one of them and is well in train as far as getting it planned, and there'll be further information coming out to councillors. They will be able to allow for community groups and deputations to come in with the full council. Certainly it's an idea that we've picked up from a couple other areas, and a couple other councils have shared information which they asked to be kept confidential because of their own community groups and privacy, which is fair enough. But certainly we can use a couple of their ideas. So council actually already has the head of power in this space to just go and to do what we need to do. So they're well in train as far as. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, I'm questions on notice. As we've been getting the standing committee, so where there has been some questions over a period of time. With the outstanding resolutions, the general meeting agenda, so in the information section at the back where we put the planning reports, we will actually now start to capture, well, we have been capturing the questions, whether we've been flicking them through the CRM process or another process, but any of that, and you'll notice in the standing committee minutes, there are some things that are resolved because they haven't been, but they're in action that's just been captured, so we can find where it goes. As part of, so we'll have the outstanding resolution database, but the next little stage in our evolution is any of the questions that are asked that have been placed on notice. There'll be an information report placed in the back of the agenda, and all those questions will be captured, and the response will be tabled for information, so everyone is sharing the information. So other than that, happy to answer any questions, but yeah, so it's the standing committee process as it's being embedded, and we continue to refine it and look for ways to get information out even better.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. If I could just make a couple of comments and observations. First of all, I want to thank and congratulate yourself and the executive services team on the great job you've been doing in implementing our standing committees, and particularly in relation to getting those agenda items out so promptly. Having them out Friday night gives people the opportunity over the weekend, of course, to look at them. And just to probably remind council that if we can get the process for getting items onto a standing committee meeting is to have them emailed through to the CEO, preferably by close of business on the Tuesday prior. But Mr. CEO, I think you will accept them up until midday Wednesday. Yeah. The second thing is just with questions on notice, as CEO's articulated, those questions on notice will now go into the meeting report, the agenda, so that they will be picked up as part of that process. They won't be lost in the system. And the third thing, of course, is our executive services team, led by our CEO, are well advanced in terms of the implementation of our community engagement days on the Mondays, which I think we're probably looking at possibly 2 days a month, and very keen to see those implemented so we can open up the doors of council to the community to come in and speak with council, and also use that for council workshops as required. Of course, they will be closed door meetings. They won't be open to the public because members of the public would like to come in and have a session with council to be able to present the issues or opportunities that they've got. So that'll be very much at a workshop format, Mr. CEO. Correct, yeah. So just a couple of observations and clarifications there. Councillors, any other comments on that? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very, very excited about the Community Engagement Days. I just think that's a fantastic way to get involvement with the community, and also for all the councillors and the staff, the senior staff, to hear the concerns of some of the community groups and different individuals, because I think sometimes we get mixed messages, and I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. And when I heard Mayor Jack Dempsey say that they do community engagement days and how successful they are, I just thought it was something that we absolutely should take on board. And I'm just really, really excited about getting that happening, because I just think it's a great way to consult with the community. Yeah, so just really keen to get that progressed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Other councillors? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can you just confirm for me, for the community engagement meetings, are they going to be held here in Kingaroy at all times? Are we planning to move around the region to different areas like Blackbutt, Proston, that sort of stuff, or is it going to be centralised here in Kingaroy?
Look, I think at this stage initially we were going to trial them for a period of time. My preference was to have them centrally in Kingaroy so people could come in. Just that Kingaroy is geographically fairly central between Proston and Banarkin at this stage, but certainly open to change that if council has the appetite to relocating them, Mr. CEO, if that's not too logistically problematic. Yeah.
As a workshop, Mr. Mayor, we can hold them anywhere. So I think first cab off the rank if we run the first couple and then just see how they go. So, and it's a little bit of a highly technical term, suck it and see, but to just what you're trying to achieve out of them and what groups we want to get in, and so that's as we format them through. But yeah, we can pretty much do them anywhere you want.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, through Mr. Mayor. I totally agree that yep, we need to run a few just to see where we're going and all that sort of stuff. But for me personally, speak for myself, I'd like to see it, if it is successful initially, to take it right across the region and move it across and take the whole council to different areas and all that, and let people see that we're getting across the region. Just a suggestion for the future.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Jones. And of course, really it's a decision for council. You know, if council feels that you'd like to move it around the region, I'm sure, as Mr. CEO said, we can make that happen. It's a workshop format, so it shouldn't be too difficult to do that. So very much it's your workshop process. So yeah, keen to hear from you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree. I think the community engagement days are a great tool for us as councillors, particularly because, you know, we can all ensure we're getting the same information at the same time, and it also gives us as councillors a really good opportunity to ask people who may have issues or may be requiring more information or have some great ideas to ask questions and really engage in the conversation. So I'm certainly keen to see more community collaboration. I think it's a great opportunity for us to have our ears to the ground. I do like the idea of moving across the region. I think myself, it can be quite challenging. Our calendars are quite full with meetings that are often here in Kingaroy, and certainly in my portfolio's regional development, the opportunity to get around and see what's happening in other areas is really important to all of us as councillors. So I welcome the opportunity. I think community engagement days are a great opportunity for this team to share the same information and to be working collectively with our community. So thank you for bringing it to the table, and thank you, CEO Mark and the team, for accelerating this. I know we consistently put you under the pump, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to see it moved around in the area of the South Burnett Regional Council. There's a big division. There's a big area out there that I'm sure people, and I know in this council's term, councillors being seen out and about with what we've been doing previously has been appreciated, certainly by some. So the more we can get out there to the villages and the towns outside of town central here, Kingaroy, I think would be really beneficial. So I welcome that opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Hanshin, and thanks, councillors, for your support for this important initiative to further increase our engagement with our community. That being the case, councillors, we've got the report there provided for information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Hanshin. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, thank you to our CEO and staff. Over to item 6.3, Anzac Day 2021 at 57. Mr. CEO, I might hand to you again just to lead us into this one. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. This one's an annual report. It listing all. So if anyone sees a detail that's incorrect, but to the best of our knowledge and advice we've got back, this is where everyone's going to be on Anzac Day. There's been some engagement with the RSLs. Interested. We've had a couple of inquiries, and we've put on page 61 of the agenda. It's not just the cash donations that we give to for support of Anzac Day, which is gladly given by all, but there is a fair bit of in-kind that goes into Anzac Day, particularly with traffic control, and I have heard some other areas where they are hitting a little bit of angst with that this year. It's been an annual program. It's budgeted for this council. It's a really good program, and for my thoughts on it, it's lovely to see Anzac Day this year being restored to its full potential.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and again, thank you for the work the staff are doing in supporting this as part of Council's commitment to Anzac Day. As you've highlighted, some other regional council areas have been criticised for not financially supporting Anzac Day, but of course this council has always done that and has continued to do it, so thank you very much. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive, and particularly of the in-kind support that's given. I know developing those traffic management plans and things are very challenging, particularly for volunteer groups. So I really do appreciate the work the team does in that regard. And closing the roads, things like Blackbutt. You know, we are on the highway, so it's great to actually have that support. Mr. Mayor, just a question. I seem to be the only councillor not attending a service, and I did indicate my desire to attend the Kingaroy services. I will be there regardless. I do attend the dawn service and the commemoratory service every year, of course. It's a value of my family. But I did indicate my desire to attend those services. Certainly, if it's council's decision that I'm not a council representative, I understand I'll be there regardless. But I'm probably just a little bit confused as to why I'm not here.
I would suggest an absolute and sincere apology, Council, and this is why, just checking the details. So it would be, I'm not sure which one would you like us to put you for?
Could I just perhaps say, Councillor, I'm sorry, Mr. CEO, yeah, I had written notes on this and I had included you. Sorry, I think it's a typo that was taken out, but I've got probably get the original notes to show you that. I think we had you down at Kingaroy,
Sorry,
at Memorial Park.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The councillor was actually on Cumbia with myself.
Oh, at Cumbia with Aaron, were you? Okay.
No, but that's my
Thanks,
understanding
Aaron.
on the original draft.
Sorry, Councillor Shoemaker. We certainly had you written on the draft document,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I certainly didn't see the draft. I'd be happy to attend the Cumbia service by all means, but I will also be attending the Kingaroy dawn service at 4:28 in the morning.
Yes, sincere.
If that can be noted and updated in the recommendation before council, I'd appreciate it.
It'll be added straight in. And again, sincerest apologies. So it's absolute.
No, we certainly had every councillor listed, and we certainly had you committed, Councillor Shoemaker, so thank you for bringing that to attention. I think it's just been an administrative oversight in typing up the list. Yeah, thank you. So if we can just include that. So Councillor Shoemaker at Cumbia and Kingaroy, we include you there? Thank you. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I overlooked it, but just when I saw this on the report, it reminded me that I did have a question from the president of the Mergen RSL sub-branch just about the COVID plans. Do each of the Anzac Days have to have a COVID plan? That was a question that was asked of me. Just wanted to clarify that.
We might just take that on notice, Mayor, and it's probably one we'll actually just take offline if we may. We'll just make some inquiries through Queensland Health.
Thanks very much, General Manager. If we could perhaps have a briefing on that at some stage in the next week or so, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, councillors, so we've got that there. Again, thanks to the staff for putting that together, and it's recommended that the committee recommends to council that the following council representatives attend the respective ceremonies and carry out responsibilities as required on behalf of council, and to include to include appropriately Councillor Shoemaker at Cumbia and Kingaroy Services. Okay, do we have a mover for such? Thanks, Councillor Fowler, for the seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.4, administrative amendments to council policy and associated documents, organisation branch name change at 62. And to the bit of background here, council, as presented in my portfolio report, council adopted a policy governance framework which assigns responsibilities within policies, procedures and guidelines associated with positions and organisational structure, and through extensive internal consultation, the Social and Corporate Performance Branch has undergone a name change to Corporate Services Branch, and this name effectively aligns functions delivered within the Finance and Corporate Department, positioning the branch to drive positive change through customer service, corporate governance, corporate risk and audit functions. Just before we go to the motion, General Manager, would you like to provide some further background on the matter, or Manager? Thank you.
Through you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, we did a realignment in consultation with our manager here of all the services. The social section was transferred over to communities several months ago, or several years ago now, I think. And so we did a full realignment there to recognise the true corporate governance area, which included our risk and audit. So I'll just let Manager Carolyn now just give you the detail associated with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to this particular report, the Social and Corporate Performance branch name and position titles that are of significance within the policy frameworks are quite substantial through our policy suite. So it would be timely to just do an administrative word find and replace with the new changes to both position titles and the branch name. There are probably two policies which are foremost come to mind in relation to the relationship of the actual change of functions under the branch, where it would be the Community Grants Program policy, which currently aligns to the traditional Social and Corporate Performance branch. The change would be administrative, but it would identify Communities Department and replace the General Manager for Communities with the Manager of Social and Corporate Performance. So there will be some slight changes that are a little bit different to just a fundamental name change. And the only other one that stands out is the uniform policy, which is a council internal policy, where it identifies the manager's position as being responsible for that policy, but it has shifted to executive services. So that would be, just to be transparent, that would be two opportunities to address administratively the change which has occurred.
Thank you very much, General Manager and Manager. Councillors, any conversation on that before we move to the motion? Okay, so councillors, we have the recommendation that this committee recommends to council that the Sappanet Regional Council endorse the administrative amendments to policy reflecting the branch title change from Social and Corporate Performance to Corporate Services, including associated staff position titles. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Potter. I think your hand went up at the same time, so we'll take that as a seconder. Thank you. Councillors wishing to speak for or against before we vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. And again, thank you, Mr. CEO and General Manager and staff, for the work you've done. That seems to be, well, I think it is just clearly a move in the right direction. Thank you. Okay, so let's go on now to...
Mr.
I'm sorry?
That's all right, if I may, just to follow up on the Mergen RSL question. I wanted to double check to make sure that those COVID plans are in train. So staff are contacting, are working. So the COVID plans for the Anzac Day marches are actually already started and in train. So just so the meeting is aware. So yeah, and certainly what General Manager Meehan said as well, there'll be further work, but it's been kicked off and they're working. So they probably haven't got back to the RSLs yet because we're dealing with the different agencies and working internally to hopefully knock them all up. So they're just a part of life now, I think, going forward. But yeah, they are started.
No, thanks very much, Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff, yep, so they're well and trained.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Mr. CEO. Okay, 6.5 is adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Investment Policy 21-22, statutory 009 at 64. Council, we have in front of us a copy of the proposed policy, and the recommendation is that the committee recommends to Council that the South Burnett Regional Council Investment Policy 21-22, statutory 009 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker again over there. Councillors, let's go to debate questions. Those wishing to speak for or against, please come forward. Probably, if I could just perhaps lead, the investment policies there. Just wanted to clarify that the investment policy at 3.4, trying to find that here now, gives Council the scope, General Manager, to invest with interest-bearing deposits with a commercial bank, or also, as we currently do, with the Queensland Treasury Corporation. So is the policy broad enough to consider both options within the framework of the policy?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
And it would be correct to say that the investment policy is one of a conservative in terms of risk aversion. It's very much a conservative policy, mainly around term deposits, guaranteed investments, where the capital will be preserved. Would that be correct?
That's very much correct. It's Council's risk appetite as far as investments, and that is very, very low. So we only invest there with, as the policy says, there with AAA or approved banks and credit unions. So, and mainly we invest with the QTC because it gives us the best interest rate, although sadly, the last 12 months, and though we've seen a terrible decrease in interest rates, but the staff continually monitor our investments and to try to get the best value for Council within the scope of this policy.
Thanks very much, General Manager. So just confirming, General Manager's indicated that's a very conservative investment, minimal risk, effectively deposits with fixed deposits with, I understand, QTC, and of course the cash rate as determined by the Reserve, the Federal Reserve, the RBA, is at 0.1%. I don't know if we'll ever see that in our lifetime again. 0.1%, it's almost to zero. So it's no wonder we're only getting a very minimal return on our investment, as everyone is in the cash environment. Councillors, any other questions on that before we go to the vote? Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, thank you to General Manager and our finance team for developing the draft policy. 6.6 is a resolution 2020/197, South Burnett Regional Council Infrastructure Quality Policy, statutory 029 at 73, and might just hand over to General Manager to give us an introduction to such. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we originally put up the quality policy. I believe it was back in December. Yep. The recommendation from council is that we'd like to see further KPIs put into that. What we're asking for is just a bit more time. We've just gone through audit, and as we are looking at our construction systems at the moment, which we've highlighted with council in previous workshops, we're actually working with the audit to further develop some KPIs. So we just want a bit more time so that we can actually develop those, and then obviously circulate it through the corporate process for feedback, so that we can make the policy add value to the organisation.
Thank you, General Manager. So, councillors, the recommendation there, as alluded to there, is that committee note the update report for information and that the draft infrastructure quality policy statutory 029 be represented to the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee on the 19th of May 2021 for consideration. Do we have a mover? Yes, thank you, Councillor Froloff. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Those, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.7 is the 21-22 budget parameters and timeline at 75. Mr. CEO, would you be so kind as to give us an introduction to that as well? Thank you.
I could do that, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll throw to General Manager Jarvis because this is mostly her work. It's again, as we continue to refine and improve. First year I've been here that we've had the budget parameters report tabled at a council meeting in advance, and certainly I won't go through the report in detail. But it's part of the process and there will certainly be a discussion, I have no doubt. It's at the back end of the report as to, there's been some discussion about live streaming of the budget workshops, and we're just looking for council direction on where you want to go with that. But in addition to that, so as we do the workshops each month as we prepare the budget, which we've started now, there'll be reports on the previous month's workshop presented to the following standing committees. So it's page 4, the different communications out. So we're looking to bring a lot more information through on the budget process, so people can see what's going on as it's being developed. The report goes around the parameters that have been considered as far as at the moment. It lists all the workshops that we've got plugged in at the moment, and and I'm happy to throw to General Manager Jarvis if she wants to add any more to it, and happy to take questions. And then we'll get council's direction on the streaming.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. CEO. I don't think there's a lot there that I can add. It's basically bringing this report to council to show the parameters in which we're going to develop the budget. And it's got the time frames, it's got the workshops associated with building a budget. And just for council's consideration there to virtually stage the steps for you. So if you're fully aware of how the budget will be delivered, and just supporting what the CEO has indicated, that we're looking for some direction here today. The Mayor's indicated that he has an appetite for workshops to be televised or live streamed, and you'll see there is an exemption in the Act there, or in the regs that give us an exemption not to do so, but we're looking for direction from council, please, as to what you would like to see.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO and General Manager. And again, I want to acknowledge and congratulate you on the work that you've done. Credit where credit's due. This year, we didn't have an election to have to worry about, so you got hit the ground running. And I know that first and foremost, a lot of work done to get all of these workshops. You can see the list there. It's an extensive list of workshops that council has been given the privilege to be involved in. And we're really, really on the front foot with an aspiration to adopt the budget on the 30th of June, with workshops right throughout March, April, May, June. So 4 months of workshops leading into adoption on the 30th of June. Congratulations for the wonderful work you've done and having us very much organised and prepared in what is a very robust process of workshops and consultation. The second thing, of course, is to also acknowledge the work that the staff are doing in the departments under the leadership of the general managers in putting together these budgets and subjecting themselves to the interrogation of council as we work through the initial stages of these workshops. We do not tend to leave any stone unturned here in council when it comes to questioning the budget figures that come forward. So thank you for that. And also to the finance team that put together all of those reports. A lot of journals and work goes on in the background, I know, to produce the plethora of documents that we get presented with as part of the budget process. And we take it very seriously. We all as an organisation here take our responsibilities to the community in terms of managing the community's funds in a very accountable and responsible manner with the highest level of duty of care. So thank you to the staff in supporting us in doing that. So just in relation to the direction there, so I had requested consideration council be given to live streaming our budget workshops, and as CEO and General Manager have highlighted, Section 254J of the regulations does allow council to close meetings to discuss the local government's budget. So we are as an exemption to the requirement to have open meetings, budget items can be discussed in closed meetings under the regulations. However, my desire there was to start to slowly open up or progressively open up the discussions that we have in council leading up to the adoption of the budget to community, so that we can perhaps take the community with that with us on that journey. And what I'd like to recommend, and perhaps it'll be a change, just a change to the motion, is that we look at doing so for the workshops that are programmed in from the 27th of April on screen through to the 30th of June, of course, which is the final meeting anyway. It'll be a special meeting. So it would be from the 27th of April moving forward. Reason being that they're all the final workshops, and they'll be the ones I think we will have much better information to be able to share, and acknowledging that if there are items that are for a particular reason sensitive or need to be discussed in a commercial, in a confidential closed meeting, that there is the scope to close the meeting for that purpose under Section 254J. Mr. CEO, did you just want to clarify that? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if we, given it's an associated motion to the report, if we just, the first one, if we deal with them separate rather than amending that, just note, unless there's any issues with the report, the report's noted, and then deal with your live streaming, and then that way they don't get blended. Certainly the budget, and it's a policy, it really is a policy decision of council. It would be the first time, I think, here that would have happened. So we'll just take council's direction and then work within the parameters of open and closed as per any other meeting. So it really is a policy direction for you guys.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO. So I'll just, we'll put the recommendation forward that the report for the 21-22 budget parameters and timelines be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors wishing to comment or speak for or against that motion at this stage? No? Sorry, Councillor Shoemaker, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly think the first workshops that we've had have been brilliant. There's been a lot of work, particularly discussion around surface levels, and I really value the work that the team's putting into really unpacking that, particularly for a new councillor, really explaining the terminology. So I really do think this is a great approach and a big improvement on what we sort of stepped into last year. I think I would just like to ask, in regards to rates and charges, I just wanted clarity for this for our community. So it says in the report that in preparation for the 21-22 general rates and charges are currently modelled with a 0% indexation, awaiting council direction. So I just wanted to confirm that means that we're going to maintain what we went into the, what our decision of our budget was last year, and then have these workshops to really understand what the operational needs of the organisation are, so that at the very end of this process, by the time we get to those final workshops, we fully understand what it actually costs to run the operation, and then what our organisation will need to function into the new year. So I'm really mindful with COVID, we made the decision not to increase the general rate and maintain a 0% general rate. And I have had the feedback. I know that's been confusing for some ratepayers because there has been the change in valuations, and the previous council really did do all it could to really remediate the hit to our ratepayer by averaging that out over 3 years. So I know that's our last year of the increase in valuation. So I just wanted to understand, if I can, if GM Susan can add a little bit more to that we're going to start with what we have and then really take a deep dive in terms of what we may need, so that by the time we get to those final workshops, every one of us as councillors is really clear moving forward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. That is the actual intent, councillor, with these workshops, is that councillors know exactly what the financial position of council is, so that, like you said, we're unpeeling everything, so it's very, very clear, so you've got concise information to make valid decisions as far as the future of this council. With regard to the zero increase here in general rates, yes, we've modelled it, they're waiting direction from council as to where we go from there, but we will be conducting the rates workshop, like I said, to be very, very clear on, you know, what's needed to for the council to function there through our rate revenue and that. So I'll just get Manager Selina just to add anything further to that she might like. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that is correct. At some point, though, we do need some direction on where you guys want to go with what rates, if you do want to increase them, because there's a fair body of work of actually pulling all of that together once we've got that direction. So before, in that list of workshops that we've got there, before we get to where those final ones, so while we're going through these draft ones, before we start hitting those final ones, we need that direction on how you want to present that final document so that we can go away and make sure that we've put all the parameters into the background. So like for your sewerage, the reclassification and the different ways that we've been looking at that, the rates team has a lot of work in the background to reconfigure if you decide to go that way. So we have started with the 0%, and and as we balance our budget and work out what is needed in each area. So you've started with your water, sewage and waste rating models last week. They'll come back again because at some point we actually have to make a decision on where we want to go with them.
So through you, Mr Mayor, could I take this opportunity too, please? I'm sorry, it was remiss of me. I just wanted to recognise the finance team that you have here at the council. The staff in the finance department are true professionals, and the work that they put in is superior. It is excellent. They're very qualified. They're very loyal. Their work ethic is wonderful, and I just want to acknowledge the support that my team gives not only to me but to you as councillors, because they really are under the pump a lot of the time and they're punching way above their weight. So just acknowledging my finance team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, General Manager and Manager. Okay, other councillors? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just asked after clarification. So what are we up to as far as the resolution goes here?
So, Councillor, we just have the motion at hand, which that the budget parameters and timelines, as shown in this report, be received and noted. That's all at this stage.
Yeah, right. So there's no decision being made on this today. Is that right?
No, that's not being considered at this point in time. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Jones. Okay, other councillors? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, moving forward now, I'd like to move a motion that the workshops listed in the budget parameters and timelines report between 27th of April 2021 and 2nd of June 2021 be open meetings, open workshops, not meetings, open workshops. Open to the community through live streaming. Mr. CEO should add something there about the need to close meetings under certain circumstances as well, or would that just be by default through the regulation?
It would be default. I think we'll probably use a different word to workshops, so that we would almost be a budget committee. If we call them a budget committee, and then we can the regulations just naturally kick in because a workshop by its definition is closed unless open to the public. So yeah,
Yes.
so if people are happy with that, we're just at the budget committee meetings listed. Yep. And then that way, if there's need, we can just close in accordance with the regulations. So effectively, the meeting procedure, conduct a meeting procedure policy would stand for all those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Would it be an opportunity also to open the public gallery subject to the COVID limitations?
Very much it would be an open meeting, but it would be subject to COVID, and there is only, regrettably, a certain number of people we can put in here, but certainly if they're live stream, if they're open, they're open. So yeah, but it's COVID rules apply.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So be open to the community through live streaming and gallery attendance in compliance with COVID. Are they COVID, General Manager, are they COVID requirements or regulations, or what do we call them? COVID rules, COVID-19 requirements. Yep. COVID-19 requirements. Yeah, that'd be fine. I think I'm happy with that, Mr. CEO. Does that look okay from your point of view? Okay, that's the case. I'll now move that motion. Does anyone wish to second that? Yeah, thank you. Well, Councillor Duff or Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Duff, thank you, has seconded that. Councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion, please come forward. Happy to have a, let's consider this carefully. It's a big step. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really keen to see this happen. I actually would have liked possibly more rather than let less meetings be live to the public. I just think that over the years, councillors deliberate and agonise over rate rises and different parts of that budget, and no one ever has ever got to see it. And I think it's exciting that we are actually going to give the public a chance to actually see the debate, because when you hear the debate, you would understand, or the public would understand, how concerned councillors are about trying to do the right thing by the community and the challenges that we face with different like issues around depreciation, unfunded depreciation, just the general cost of running the whole organisation. I think that the more we take the community with us, the better outcomes we're going to get, as far as everybody being on the same page, the community understanding that we do really care about the community and we are doing our level best to get it right. And when you see, over the years that I've been involved, we've stayed up like till late into the night agonising over how we can keep those rate rises down. So I just think that it's fantastic opportunity for the community to actually see the nuts and bolts of what goes in behind some of the decisions that appear to be rubber stamped on budget day. So just really keen to see this happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak for or against? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am supportive of this motion. I do think there are enough workshop dates there for us as councillors to really get our heads around the budget and really understand the direction that we want to give the organisation. I think an opportunity to open up the budget meetings. This is our community's budget. This is our ratepayers' budget. And I think the more they know and understand and have the opportunity to be a part of the process, the better. I don't think we've got anything to hide. If anything, I think some of the learnings through the Ipswich City Council, some of the things they're doing with their live dashboards around the condition of their budget and if anything, I'd really like to see our council move that way. Local government budgets are so much different to small business budgets. I've learned that firsthand. And, I think this is a great opportunity to really bring our community along on the journey, to have that education and awareness and understand, as Councillor Duff has said, just how much of a difficult decision it is to make. I've certainly valued the workshops that we've had, the discussions and the decisions before this council not just this year or next year or even this term into the future, the next term and the following term are significant. We really do have ageing infrastructure. We really do have a lot of assets to maintain, and our ability to meet those needs and rising community expectations is quite challenging. So I think this is a good step forward. I do think the staff have license if there are agenda items in which, that do need to be closed for further discussion. I think we use the legislation there. I understand that. But all in all, I'm supportive of this. I don't feel we've got anything to hide, and I welcome the opportunity to bring our community along on the journey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Councillors, is there anyone that wishes to speak against or raise concerns? It is a big step for our council to take these online. Councillor Froloff, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I do have concerns about live stream and the budget from those dates. If we live stream it, there's going to be community out there pulling us every direction around, like contacting us after the meetings and saying, no, this is what we've got to do. We're going to upset people regardless. We always do. And I've got no issues about sending the draft budget out to the public, the community, but I have got concerns about having it live streamed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Other councillors? Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's a 50-50 split for me, and every councillor that's spoken here before me has made valid points, and even yourself, Mr. Mayor, that's bringing certainly endorse Councillor Shoemaker's opinions there that we have got nothing to hide. They are the final capital expenditure works, so you would nearly think that we're getting down to the nitty-gritty and finalising everything there. And I do take on board what Councillor Froloff just said. As you go through, it doesn't matter what you do or where you're at in these budget discussions, you're going to upset somebody, and that's part of the role, I guess, that we put our hand up for. So, yeah, I'm 50-50 on this one. It doesn't really worry me if we do, and doesn't really worry me if we don't, because, we should be at a point in that final capital expenditure where we should be nearly finalised. And I guess, in that point, we're going to have to take a bit of flack from the community. Even when we put the budget out, we're going to cop it anyway in different aspects. We try and do, and Councillor Duff certainly hit the nail on the head there, where we certainly agonise over a lot of decisions. So this is a 50-50 call for me. It doesn't really worry me, but yeah, that's just more, just wanted to express my views on this. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Other councillors? Councillor Henson?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I agree with everybody in the chambers. There's 50-50, as Councillor Jones just said, but would I be correct in saying under the Section 254J, we're certainly at liberty to call any section confidential and close it to the public? So I think that I'm comfortable with that, that's for sure, I think. And as Councillor Duff and first year in council, we certainly have antagonised over some decisions with the budget and long into the afternoon and the night previously. So I think that section allows us perhaps an avenue that we can be a little bit more comfortable with some things. So I'm comfortable with that part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, at first I did have to think about this long and hard, and my first thought was no, but if we're just taking the final, we're not going to call them workshops anymore, are we, Mr. CEO? We're going to call them committee meetings. So, look, I'm actually all for this because I think the community need to know what we do. But my other question in line with this is, with the community consultation that we used to do with this, how does that work then with live streaming? Do we need that community consultation, or how does that actually work for the community? Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Potter. Just at the top of that, Linnell, it will need to be that the committee recommends to council, just there, because it doesn't have the delegation to create this. The other thing is that probably just, and that will allow me, with councillors' indulgence, just to refine that a little bit if it gets up, because there's probably one piece missing out of it. that converts the workshops to committees. So yeah, so that's leads me into the nice segue into your question. The community engagement days, if I've got this right, will just be a good old-fashioned workshop. So they'll as I said, we've already got the head of, I'm repeating myself probably a little bit, well, we've already got the head of power doing to organise those. So they're just almost business as usual. It'll be just a case of dates and talking about them. So they don't have a terms of reference. They don't have, it's literally an information exchange with no decision. So this would be different. The committee won't carry, the budget committee won't carry a delegation, to be clear. So it will be an exchange of information, but giving a committee, it will allow any direction, I suppose, to come out of it to be tracked for, same as a standing committee. The head of power still rests with the general meeting and also the special budget meeting. So the budget workshops all the way through, and we are similar to every other council, is that the budget meeting is the head of power for the budget, and that's where council by resolution adopts its budget. And yeah, anyway, that's, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, just for my own personal use, Mr. Mayor, just want to clarify. So the resolution you've got there, that will automatically include that 254J item number 3, and that doesn't need to be mentioned anywhere. So that'll all just
As a committee of council, the code of conduct and the act and regulations apply. So council can close a meeting at any point. So yeah, so that's what I think. Between now and next week, that resolution certainly gives the intent. We might just tidy it up a little bit for want of better language for the general, where it can be enacted.
And just through you, Mr. Mayor, again. So what's that process there, Mr. CEO? So if council decides someone raises the issue, or how does that, if there's an item in those budgetary talks, how do we progress that through to closing the meeting?
This will formalise this process. There will be a little bit extra for us. This will formalise an agenda process for us. It will be, if there is information that is considered or needs to be kept confidential, we'll try and identify any of that in the first instance and identify a closed section in those meetings to start with. But standing orders can be relaxed by a procedural resolution at any point in time, and council can move into a closed session by resolution at any point in time. The committee meeting will be exactly the same as in, well, again, these don't carry any formal delegations, but no decision can be made in a closed session.
Yep.
That no recommendation, no resolution, so closed sessions are for discussion only.
Yep. Thank you. Very good.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Mr. CEO. Just want to also clarify there that does pick up also the review of the operational plan and the operational plan, the final operational plan workshop now become meeting. Is everyone comfortable with that as well? Those operational plan discussions will be also open. Just wanted to probably just, if I can now, if everyone's happy, I might just, as the mover, provide some closing comments before we go to the vote. So first of all, I think I've put this forward because I do believe that the community have, particularly at the last election, made it very clear that they would like to see the doors of council open, that they would like to see more transparency. And I'd like to congratulate council, and particularly on the work of our CEO, who has a very strong knowledge in terms of meeting protocols and corporate governance. Under that leadership and with support of this council, unanimously we've adopted standing committee meetings, one of few councils to have that level of openness and transparency, and we've now done away with the previous portfolio briefings so that we have opened that up to the community. This is one of those examples today. It's great to see the media here reporting on the things that we discussed today, and this is just another extension of that. So I certainly would commend this initiative to council as an important response to community feedback, to community desires. I think also I would commend it as an important move forward in terms of supporting the government's agenda to further reinforce the Local Government Act principles in relation to open and transparent governance. and the Belcara reforms seek to only strengthen the government's commitment to that. And the Belcara reforms, of course, are no doubt moving towards seeing more open, more transparent meetings. And of course, that's all hopefully going to lead us into an environment where we will ultimately there have greater accountability to our community for whom we serve. So on that basis, I would like to commit it to council. And with that, unless anyone else wants to comment, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Okay, we have 6 votes there, so in favour. Those against? And we'll just note Councillor Froeloff against. Okay, so the motion is carried 6 to 1. Thank you all. Councillors, we'll now just move on to item 6.8, which is the Kingaroy Transformation Project petition at 78. Mr. CEO, could I hand over to you just to, again, lead us into this one? Thank you.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. The report's there. Now, there are some questions that you sent through in advance, so whether you wanted to deal with them straight away or at a later stage. I'm probably in the point of pretty much happy to take questions rather than the petition has been received. I suppose as far as, again, it's the cycle of a petition, so we received. There is a note in there, the petition itself, probably the wording asked about rescinding a resolution. It is not so much technically that we can rescind the resolution. It's been enacted, but council every year through its budget process sets its forward budgets. The 2 recommendations are just dealing with the information as far as replying to the petition organisers and that the funding's available, and yeah, really quite happy to take all of us are happy to take questions and respond to any points. Yep.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. That would seem to be a sensible approach, Councillor. If you're happy to, we'll open it up to discussion, have a conversation about the petition and see where we go from there. So a little bit of background to this. I might just read off the report for the benefit of the gallery and for the community. So Council resolved at its meeting on the 25th of November 2020 with the resolution to effectively approve a budget of $13.9 million, including contingency, with the additional budget to come from funded depreciation, restricted cash over the period of project, with $2 million coming from transport infrastructure, $300,000 from water and wastewater, and $500,000 from property sales. So the resolution effectively added an extra $2.8 million to the KTP project budget, and of course was resolved by council 4 votes to 3. Following that, council have now received this petition. And as Mr. CEO said, the petition states, we the undersigned respectfully petition the South Bennett Regional Council as follows, that the decision by the South Bennett Regional Council to approve, well, it says 13.3 million, but it was actually 13.9 million for the CBD transformation project, with indications that this may further escalate, has the potential to increase the burden on already stressed ratepayers while reducing the ability to complete other essential works. We call on the council to rescind the decision from the meeting on the 25th of November 2020 to commit a further $2.8 million to this project. Now, as our CEO has articulated, there is not the capacity here to rescind that motion, even though we do have 511 signatures on that put forward. So I do have some questions that I have provided over the last couple of days to our senior executive team, and I will share those shortly. But just to firstly come back to the recommendation, and so the recommendation is that the committee recommend to council that the CEO be delegated to respond to the petitioners. 1, detailing key facts and information within the report that identifies the project objectives in relation to renewal and modernisation of public assets that is supported by asset management principles, economic enablement, livability and inclusivity, and 2, clearly demonstrates for the funding for the project is fully available from both external grants, funded depreciation for infrastructure projects and unallocated restricted cash as resolved by council, and does not place the council under financial stress. And council, that's the officer's recommendation that's come forward for council to consider. So I might not put that up as a motion just yet. We might just have a conversation if council's happy to deal with it in that way. Sorry, if committee is happy to deal with it in that way. And so the questions that I had provided, if council's happy for me to put those forward now, were number one, questions were that in relation to the $2.8 million that council resolved to fund out of the capital budget, the project moving forward, how much of the $2.8 million is coming from restricted cash, and what impact will that have on the resealing program for other roads around the region moving forward? Will the CapEx resealing program now be delayed or changed as a result of the additional allocation to Kingaroy? So I might just put that question forward now, if that's okay, Mr. CEO. Thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. Just in regards to the resealing program, the forward 10-year CapEx program is budgeted at an overall asset network level, which is what we've detailed on page 84 of the Transport Asset Management Plan. By way of example, for the 21-22 year, the nominal allocation for the sealed bitumen resealing and rehabilitation asset class was nominated at $6.253 million. And for the unsealed gravel resheeting, the asset class nominal allocation was $3.672 million. This program includes an allowance based on historical available depreciation, an assumption with also possible external funding for roads to recovery and works for Queensland that may be applied to those programs. Specific projects within the nominal network and component allocations are nominated for prioritisation and approved through the council budget deliberations for the upcoming financial year. So those priorities are set by council at its budget time. The objective of the annual capital works program is to develop a program based on council's priorities and consider optimisation of available value of money through condition data and possible treatment options. For example, council will consider both pavements and its seal condition when selecting appropriate treatments for a sealed road, and the details of the draft annual capital works program are reviewed by council, and council and officers at that time will execute the council capital works program. The AMP is reviewed each year and comprehensively updated after comprehensive revaluation. So the priorities are set by council as far as the effect on the resealing program based on the nominal allocation that you provide, and we manage it at the network level.
Thank you, General Manager. So just following on from that, just another question that I did put forward on Monday was that obviously in the report it states that officers suggested at the time of the decision that this program could come from reallocating reseals that were proposed in previous forward plans to fund the footpath, pavement and sealed elements as the unfunded depreciation was currently applied to these assets in the program. Officers will recommend to maintain resheeting programs of rural roads and reduce the nominal reseal program over the KTB budget term as asset data and recent programs support this would be the ideal recommendation. So two questions in relation to that. One, can you please clarify and or provide documentation as to when council was advised, and I quote, that officers suggested at the time of the decision that this program could come from reallocating reseals that were proposed in previous forward plans?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We discussed that with council at the final KTB workshop on the 4th of November between 1:30 and 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Mr. General Manager, thank you. So that was discussed at a workshop on the 4th of November. Yep, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that, so thank you. That's answered the question. The second question, again, in relation to that statement is, the statement from officers says that this program could come from reallocating reseals that were proposed in previous forward plans. Could you please provide copies of what had been proposed in these previous forward plans, including which roads were identified within the plans as scheduled for reseal? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that'll be per our previous answer in line with the 2.8 million. So council sets a prioritised program once it allocates its money for the year. So that'll be where the forward list of reseals is generated for the coming year, which is through the CapEx budget workshops.
Thank you, General Manager. So when you say that it says reseals that were proposed in previous forward plans. That proposal then, that would previously been put forward to council, did not include a list of those reseals?
No, Mr Mayor. So just as per my previous answer, the forward 10-year CapEx program is budgeted at the overall network level. So it's on page 84 of the asset management plan. So it details the program suggestions for that, but the detail level is not set in until it's set by council at its priority budget workshops. That's why the other recommendations that we'd be looking forward into the op plan coming forward would be to develop a prioritised program for the coming year, so you can get a full metric look at that.
Thank you, General Manager. So I'm just wanting to confirm that that of the $2.8 million, $2 million is being redirected from transport infrastructure, and that is coming from reseals, but we don't and didn't know at the time of the decision which roads would be affected. It's just part of the overall budgeting. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so it's funded depreciation, so we just make a nominal strategy. It's not necessarily reseals, it's from your sealed roads, so it includes your rehab as well. And that's probably per our comments in the report, Mayor, that probably clarifies those of how the budget's directed by council.
Thank you, General Manager. I would just note, though, however, that your report does say reseals, would be redirected from reseals.
Yeah, so that's fine. Yeah, bitumen reseals, it's, yeah, so it could
From
be
reallocating
reseals. Yeah,
reseals.
it should be sealed roads, but reseals is part of that program.
Yep. Good, thank you. I just wanted to put those questions out there. Councillors, we're just having, general discussion on this as we can in the committee meeting. Any other discussion before we consider a motion in relation to dealing with this petition? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a question. It's been good to actually revisit the budget, and I do remember when this came before council, I'm definitely very passionate about the project. I think it's great, and the work that the team's been doing, it's been great to go and have a look firsthand at what they're doing. I've been over the bellwether report that we've been given in terms of what will actually be delivered. I do have some concerns that there are some areas in that report that perhaps aren't in the scope, and I think there needs to be perhaps more workshops to unpack really. I would like to better understand in terms of the contingency we've put aside. I feel like the risk for our project, and I've spoken about this before, is the risk of an overspend, and I know we've talked about having more reports come to council through the infrastructure briefing meetings in terms of how we're tracking on that budget, and I really just want to make sure. I'd like to know, the first question is in terms of what is the contingency out of the $12.9 million that's been set aside, $13.9 million set aside for the project.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, if you're happy. Without the exact number in front of me, I believe it's in the order of 800,000. What we can do as part of the infrastructure reporting is we can give a budget overview as part of that report, and particularly we can make sure the contingencies added as a line item for you. So we're happy to work that up. Yeah. What we'll do is we'll bring the report to the April Standing Committee, which will give progress on the project, and then we'll look at building a financial template for that as well. So you've got some overview of that. So also that will come through on the quarterly reviews as well. So any changes to that project, but if we're accessing that contingency, we would be happy to report that through to council so that we're nice and, yeah.
I certainly would be really much more comfortable with that.
Yep.
I know we've talked about as a team that, it's important for us to deliver the project on time and on budget. And I really think it's important that as a team we have that. And clearly, from the 513 signatures, out of respect for those people, I really think we all as councillors take our responsibility to financial diligence very seriously. And I think being able to consistently inform the community and maintain that open line of communication around how we're tracking from a budget perspective is really, really important. So I value that. Thank you.
We would be happy through you, Mr Mayor, to probably sit with the council too and just get some feedback around some of the reporting that you'd like to know about the project, even if it's not in the report, whether we can send that as an update on progress and those things. More than happy to, yep, quite happy to.
Definitely. I think the workshop that we had around the third-party report Bellwether had prepared was good, but I do think there is more work to be done in that space. So it'd be great to have that come forward, because I'm hearing people, you know, everyone sees, and in the report here, I would, as Division 4 Councillor for Kingaroy, would just like to remind the community, and it's here on page 82 of the report. For information, Council has invested minimally in the Kingaroy area over recent period by way of transport renewal and major upgrades, as there's been a focus on reducing backlogs and renewals in rural roads and other towns. The strategy was undertaken to enable Council to put in place better maintenance practices across the region. So, you know, for me, and furthermore in the report, given the need for the KTP project economic and livability outcomes, the poor condition of infrastructure along with the large volume of pedestrian and vehicle traffic, the shift in renewal priority is undertaken with due consideration to other network needs over the short and long term. And in responding to the questions the Mayor's put forward, I feel like you've addressed that's going to consistently be a challenge for Council, certainly, but I feel provided that the Infrastructure Committee is consistently reporting back to Council about that budget, the biggest risk for me is delivering the project on time and on budget. And if we can consistently have conversations about that, I think we can keep our community, certainly make our community and our ratepayers much more comfortable about the project. So I welcome those discussions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly respect the decision of Council. I acknowledge the work that's gone into tabling the petition. However, Council did make that decision. The action has been taken to start the Kingaroy Transformation Project, fully behind it, and would welcome the opportunities, the outcomes, economic outcomes that are going to flow from this. We're already seeing great conversations had in the community. So keep up the great work, team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we haven't gone on to the recommendation, but I'm just flagging that I'm not going to support the recommendation because I think I agree with the actual, you know, that we do the Kingaroy Transformation Project, but I was very concerned about the overspend, and in light of some of the figures that have come out with long-term expenditure and borrowings, I'm concerned, as I was back then, that this is going to cause major issues for the council, and there's a lot of projects that I think Kingaroy would like to see, including the swimming pool, Memorial Park upgrade, that for me were a priority. So I'm actually going to flag that I'm speaking against the recommendation. I think that as a committee, and also the fact that we've now got these standing committees, that the very least we could do with the fact that these people have petitioned, and I know there's angst out in the community, and I know that Councillor Henshin and I attended a Geelong meeting with the Mayor, and it was raised there about supporting the extra funding for the KTP. So I just think that at the very least, and out of respect for the people who have put the petition forward, we need to bring it to the next standing committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Look, just a few further comments on this, and it's an important conversation to have because there has been ongoing, commentary in the community, and we do have 511 constituents who have signed this petition of concern. Can I also reinforce that I live in Kingaroy and I know a lot of Kingaroy people. This, as Councillor Schumacher said, and she's absolutely right, Kingaroy's Main Street infrastructure is tired. It is old and it needs replacing. There's no doubt about that, and this project is long overdue, needs to happen, particularly in relation to the sewerage and water infrastructure, particularly in relation to the pavement, and also in relation to the footpath infrastructure. So I absolutely fully support the Kingaroy Transformation Project, and I congratulate the previous council, and particularly under the leadership of Mayor Campbell, who I've consistently said without his leadership we would not be seeing this project come to fruition. We're very indebted to him. And of course, and as Councillor Schumacher said, we must all fully respect the decision that was taken of Council on the 20th of November. Having said that, though, at that meeting, I did raise concerns, and I did express that, you know, as a 20-year experienced qualified accountant practicing consulting to small and significantly large businesses around their financial management, I did express my serious concerns at that time as to council's as to the fact that this could, in my view at least, as one councillor, put council under financial distress moving forward. My concerns are now heightened in that recent weeks, through our budget workshops, we have received additional information, and I must say that that information at this stage are only estimates, so there's still a lot of work to be done to pin down more accuracy around those estimates. So for that reason, I'm not going to share the numbers that we've been receiving in recent workshops, but I can say this to council and to the community. We have multi-million dollars worth of water infrastructure that is going to need renewal and replacement to meet regulatory standards and to also secure up our sewerage and our water network over the next 10 years. Now, some of that is needed more urgently, such as a reservoir at Mount Marulan, such as a time frame that we've got by 2025 to fix Gordon Brook Dam. Now, both of those projects, we are talking multi-million dollars. And, you know, the amount of money is a lot, and it will come out in future meetings, budget capex work meetings, the sort of numbers we're talking about. Multi-million dollars of investment required in our water infrastructure, not just over the next 10 years, but some of it within the next 5 years. I've also seen figures from our accounting team that indicate that within the next 2 years, we could have more debt than we have, more borrowings than we have cash in the bank for the first time in a long time. There is also the potential that by 2024, at this end of this term of council, we will have, and I've got the figures here in front of me, again, an even further level of borrowings so that our borrowings will be even, the gap between our borrowings over our cash at bank will be even greater. And these are the concerns that I raised at that meeting, that we could be heading down a path where we would one day have more borrowings than we have cash at bank. These figures as presented in the last week or two are indicating that could well be a reality. Now, it may not be, but we're yet to see that information come through over the next 2 to 3 months. And I really just wanted to highlight to council that we have an obligation to carry out our due diligence in making sure that we fulfil our duty of care to the community under the Act to manage the finances carefully. There are some frightening figures coming through in terms of our future capital requirements, in terms of the cash at bank that we've got. And I just wanted to make that statement today, leave it at that, and I certainly look forward to having much more information come forward around this moving forward. I personally, as one councillor, would like to see an independent financial analysis undertaken in relation to the KTP budget, because 2.8 is a significant amount of money when we start to look at the other commitments this council has got, and the position that we're in terms of our cash at bank and our level of borrowings. It is, as a professional finance professional, I must say to you, the figures I'm seeing at the moment are concerning to me, and I would like it noted in the minutes of this committee meeting that I have raised concerns about the potential impact for this allocation of funding to put council under future financial distress. If I could, please, I'd be very grateful to have that duly noted. I'll leave it at that. Other councillors? Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, just in response to some of your statements, I just wanted to ask GM Susan a question, just in relation to your comment about borrowings. I do understand you're right. However, I won't operate from a place of fear. Our borrowings are high for a region of our size, absolutely. But it's my understanding, GM Susan, and I'd just like to confirm this for the Chamber and Council, that local government, a requirement of local government is that we have 3 months' worth of operating expenses in the bank account so that we can pay staff and alike in the event something should happen. And I just want to confirm that at the moment, Council has 3 months' worth of operating expenses in its restricted cash in the bank.
That's correct, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a requirement of the regs there that we, regulations, local government regulations, that we had a minimum of 3 months operating revenue. We have I think currently about 22 million restricted within our account.
And further to that, GM Susan, I just wanted to ask, in terms of the financial sustainability ratios in which every local government in Queensland, all 77 local governments report on, our council, and I know more information will come in the third quarter review next week, which I welcome. I know there's been a lot of work going to that. I appreciate that. But our council does at this moment have very good financial sustainability ratios looking ahead, that we're tracking okay.
That's correct, councillor.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No
this
further
point.
questions from me.
Thank you, councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Henson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for input. I'm comfortable with this, and if we go back to the recommendation where it clearly demonstrates the funding for the project is fully available and does not place this council under financial stress, and Councillor Shoemaker, as you've just asked General Manager Susie Jarvis in relation to that, I think the council is in a pretty good position to continue with this project. I'm sure if I could ask General Manager Aaron, at the present time, the KTP is tracking exceptionally well.
Yeah, I'll take that on notice, if I may, for the standing committee in April, just so I make sure I give council correct financial figures. But as it stands, I'm not aware of any major access to contingencies or anything like that. From what I've seen, the progress is good and the costings are good at this stage. But we can give further information, and again, I'd welcome the councillor to probably sit with us and go through the report so we can make sure we give council what they need to make sure everyone's happy.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Thanks, General Manager Meehan. And as Councillor Shoemaker said, very much look forward to those reports coming through at future infrastructure standing committee meetings, and very much look forward as we start to have those public meetings around our budget situation to seeing those figures come out into the public arena and giving the public the opportunity to come on the journey with us as we share some of the information in relation to council's forward forecasts. Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Are we debating this recommendation at this
No,
point?
we are not. We're
No.
just having a discussion, a committee
Okay,
discussion
so we're
at
still
this
having
point in time.
discussion. Good. Okay, so I'm just flagging in response to what Councillor Shoemaker has said about the fact that, yes, we are in it right now. Yeah, our figures all look great. We're tracking well. I'm talking about when we look at the figures that were revealed to us recently with the huge water borrowings that we're going to need to do into the future and all of these things. And it's also about priority. So my priority was to spend that certain amount of money that we had allocated and that we budgeted for and that we had agreed to through the KTP process. We got the funding, everything. I'm ticking the boxes, all good. It was the extra money that I felt that we needed to have for other things, because it's a question of priority. So when it comes to when we want to put that bit of extra into the Memorial Park, or we want to put that bit extra into the Kingaroy swimming pool, or we've got some, even not just those things that we'd like to do, but those things that we absolutely have to do, which are the water infrastructure into the future, the wastewater treatment plants, all of those things. It's scary. So I think we've got to cut the cloth to what we can afford. I know our community is calling for that. I think that they want us to get our priorities right. And I just think that for me, the KTP is all of that stuff, vital infrastructure. Kingaroy needed that, but not the extra. And so I'm scared about the 2.9 or the extra money that we've actually put on the table, and whether it comes out of reseals or what it comes out of. But that extra money is that stuff we'd like to have, but we probably can. And things like the light, there's a whole heap of stuff that's going in there that is going to look fantastic, lights and things like that. But can we afford that at this point in time? I don't think so. So I'm absolutely keen to see this really challenged and looked at again, because I'm scared about what's going to happen long term. As the Mayor has said, he's an accountant, qualified accountant. He's worried. I'm worried. So, and I've declared my hand. I'm worried about it, and I'm just thinking that because these people have put a petition forward, it gives us a chance to have another look at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Any other councillors? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question for the CEO. In terms of this petition, probably one of my biggest concerns is the myths around this project. Some of the rumours that are around are a real worry. And I know through the discussions we've had about the community engagement days, I was just thinking, is there an opportunity? I would be more than happy to meet with the 511 people that have signed this petition. If anything, I'd welcome the opportunity to sit down with them and have a conversation about the project, because I am worried that there are aspects of how our asset management plans work, aspects of our budget, aspects of the project management behind this project that aren't fully understood. So I was just trying to understand, with the Community Engagement Days, CEO Mark, or, as part of our response to this petition, I think as leaders of our region, it would be really valuable for us to offer the opportunity to meet with the petitioners and to actually have the discussion about the project. Is there anything wrong with actually, in the response that you give them with the key facts about the project, to actually invite them to have a conversation with council about the decision council has made here and the project going forward, to confirm some of these things around the budget, our asset management plan, perhaps even our reseals program, the significant investment that has gone into our rural roads program over the last 4 years, and where we're currently sitting. Because I know the team, the work here, the asset profiles, age and asset condition, maybe we can share some of this information with the petitioners. CEO Mark?
Oops. Thank you, Councillor. Well, there's nothing that would preclude us. You would probably, if you wanted to call it a community engagement day, but you would just have a specific, given that the majority of the petitioners seem to be outside of King O'Roy, just on a very cursory comment, you would probably pick the most logical spot, even if it originated out of Geelong as the key contact. So whether we want to have a day out there, but yeah, short answer is, without me waffling, there would be nothing to preclude council should you wish.
Yes.
And yeah, be happy to attend as officers as well.
So I would like to actually move the officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to council that the CEO delegate to respond to the petitioners, to detailing the key facts and information with the report that identifies the project objectives in relation to renewal and modernisation of public assets. That is supported by asset management principles, economic enablement, livability and inclusivity, and clearly demonstrate the funding for the project is fully available from both external grants, funded depreciation for infrastructure projects, and unallocated restricted cash as resolved by council, and does not place the council under financial stress. And I propose an amendment with number 3. And CEO Mark, I welcome your support here in getting the wording of this right. However, that council invites the petitioners petitioners.
It would be difficult to invite all if we're just a petition organiser.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Organiser, and I'm comfortable with community members to meet with council and openly discuss the information provided and offer an opportunity to answer any further questions they may have in regards to the project. I'd like to move that recommendation and seek a seconder. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Okay, councillors, we have the committee. We have the recommendation, the motion there as presented. Does anyone wish to speak for or against? And then we'll give Councillor Schumacher the final right of reply as the mover, as part of the process. Any councillors for or against before we go to the vote? Councillor Duff, you yes or no?
I'm speaking. I'm happy with the council invites a petition organiser and community members to meet with council. Point number 3. I guess that would the potential be that if we had the discussion and there was an opportunity then that could come back to the table? I guess there would be an opportunity once we had a discussion with the group that someone could move it back to the table. So I guess I'm just asking myself questions as I'm speaking because it's keeping it open. It is keeping it open. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Other councillors? Opportunity to speak. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And in response to Councillor Duff's comments, I believe from the conversation and discussion we've had here this morning with GM Meehan, that there will be open infrastructure committee meetings. There'll be reports come back about the project. There'll be plenty of information shared. So if post that, by all means, there'll be information. We are, as Mr Mayor has said, about opening up the doors of this chamber to our community. And by all means, I welcome the opportunity to have further conversations about the project and its outcomes. And I think the information is going to consistently flow. This is a 2-year project, so I'm hearing you, and I absolutely agree. There is risk of overspend. There is risk of this project going over time. And for council, that is something that we deal with every single day. There is with every major project we have. And I'm hearing you in terms of key priorities. There are plenty. I know every single councillor in this room could list off a number of key priorities. And I'm hearing you in terms of being able to turn on that tap and flush the toilet. They're the key priorities for this region. The core services that I know as a ratepayer, I don't recognise how important they are until you can't actually do those things. I'm hearing you, Councillor Duff, and I don't think it's this council's intention at all to hide anything from its community. If anything, we want to be open, and I think this recommendation actually demonstrates this council's community. If there are commitment to its community, if there are issues, we are more than willing to sit down and work through them together. I think it's a great outcome for council moving forward, and certainly I think the work that goes into preparing these reports and keeping us informed. So thank you. I'm fully supportive of this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Other councillors? Okay, Councillor, I might just make a couple of observations. I am going to speak against the motion. Absolutely fully support the KTP project. I've been around Kingaroy long enough to know how much the community not just wants this project, but needs it and deserves it. It is just so important for this region. The community, the town looks tired. You know, the pavement needs rehabbing. You've only got to drive along Alfred Street and see the pavement breaking up. Walk out here on Glendon Street and see the pavement breaking up. It needs doing, there's no doubt about it. Look, as I've said, so I fully support it. I support number 1 and I support number 3, and I think that's a great recommendation that we go out and invite the community in, because I agree with Councillor Shoemaker. There's just too much false information out there in the community about this project. We need to clarify that with the community. But I am concerned, as a member of council, as an experienced qualified accountant, I have gone through the figures, and I know people don't like me using that term, experienced qualified accountant, perhaps out in the public arena, probably the community might probably get sick of me saying it, but I certainly want to acknowledge the respectful debate we've had, or the respectful conversation we've had. Council, it's wonderful to do that. But I am concerned about statement 2, that this does not place the council under financial stress. Does not place the council under financial stress. I have seen figures, and I acknowledge they are only broad estimates at this stage. The figures are probably going to change significantly, but I have seen figures in recent weeks that indicate that there are tens of $millions coming our way in expenditure to maintain our water network. That really worries me around shoring up Kingaroy's water supply for both some of the major processing businesses in our town. Without Mount Warrulan Reservoir, that I've got a report here that says that that's at significant risk. Without Gordon Brook being rehabilitated, we are going to have major problems in terms of supplying Kingaroy with water. Without getting the Morgan water treatment plant fixed, and these are serious figures. We're not talking $1 or $2 million. These are multi-million-dollar projects that have to happen within, well, the next 10, but in some cases the next 5 years. That really concerns me. I'm really concerned about the fact that we've got forecasts that indicate that we will have, that yes, we do currently meet our asset sustainability ratio of 90%. Absolutely. Yes, we do have enough cash to cover 3 months' expenses. But from the analysis I've done and some of the figures seen in terms of our current forward projections on cash at bank, we're going to be really sailing close to the wind potentially. If these turn out to be correct, we're going to be sailing close to the wind within 2 years in terms of 3 times our monthly cash expenses. And I could be wrong, but I'm saying we may be, potentially, we may be sailing close to the wind on the restricted cash and the free cash that I can see available from figures that were presented to us on the 2nd of February, on the 2nd of March. So on that base, look, Council, absolutely support 1 and 3, very concerned about where we're spending our capital money at the moment, and really would prefer to see in there that we have some independent financial analysis done on our financial position before in relation to this and the impact it has. I'll leave it at that. If no other councillor wishes to speak, I've had my say. Come back to you, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can go around in circles here for quite some time, but I'll put it out there as this: the KTP project being fully funded in the event of that $2.8 million, and the KTP project has cut corners, and we come back to this project in 5 years' time with a water infrastructure under the ground, it's going to cost us $5 million. What will be the community's comment then? We do this project and we do it properly now, and we walk away from it and we get on with counselling. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm just falling over my seat. In terms of your comments, I just wondered, I can hear what you're saying in terms of independent financial analysis of the project. I'm actually just wondering if Councillor Pott is comfortable with regards to the committee recommendation, suggesting that we add to that recommendation that council, point number 4, that council once again workshop the third-party independent report of the project costings and consider, I think that's just it actually, take the and consider. So hearing you, Mr. Mayor, and that report's been done by Bellwether, I think it's a great opportunity. Noting your discussion and the discussion that we've had, which I agree is excellent, that as part of, that we do book in a third-party workshop to look at that report again, certainly consider how we may be able to, what's happening in that space, and whether there is any further steps that need to be taken with that regard.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Potter, are you happy with that addition to the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to understand this, the fourth one. So are we going to pay the third party to come in and talk to us about their report that they did? So that's going to cost us more money to actually get this group in to discuss with us. And is this something that we can use the report they've already done and get the infrastructure team to actually discuss, to go through it with us?
My apologies, Councillor Potter, for the misunderstanding. Council workshop, the third-party independent report that has been prepared by Bellwether. So we already have that report, and after we made the decision on the 28th of, after Council made the decision on the 28th of November, we did have a brief workshop about that report, and as I've indicated to GM Meehan, I certainly would welcome the opportunity to review that, review what we've learned in this previous couple of months. So I'm not suggesting spending any more money, I'm suggesting just reviewing the work that's been done, the project management work that has been done to make sure this project doesn't bring council into financial stress.
then I agree with that recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Okay, councillors, we've got the motion there as presented. Let's go to the vote and get this done. Those in favour? Okay. Those against? Okay. Motion, resolution carried, 5 votes to 2. Again, thank you, councillors, for what has been, it's been a long discussion, but I think it's been a productive discussion and a respectful one, and I thank you all for that. Much appreciated. Councillors, I think we're long overdue to have a morning tea break. I think it's probably due for a cup of tea. Is everyone happy if we break now for a 15-minute break? So I'll move a procedural motion that we close the meeting. We have a seconder for that. Thanks, Councillor Jones. Everyone in favour? Thank you all. Meeting closed now. We'll resume at 11:10 a.m. Thank you all. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'll now move procedural motion to reopen the meeting at 11:19 a.m. Do we have a seconder? Yep. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Meeting now reopened at 11:19 a.m. Council, we'll move on to 6.9, councillors, at 94, which is the trustee permit terms between council and Bunya Valley Land Care Incorporated. Mr. CEO, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. This one was left on the table last week and it was moved and seconded. So previously where council has left items lay on the table or adjourned them to another meeting, they have been just not moved yet. So because this one was moved and seconded, there's a procedural resolution to lift it from the table and then it just resumes at the point of the debate where it was. So you just start the debate again or amendments or whichever it needs to be. So it's really, Mr Mayor, if you wish to discuss it. If you don't wish to discuss it today and push it back to either next week or next month's standing committee for whatever reason, I think General Manager certainly has the clarification as far as the confusion between the parties as to who was mowing and who wasn't mowing. And with Pete, do you want me, without stealing their thunder, or Pete's thunder?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. No, I have spoken to the group that are looking at the lease, and they certainly weren't looking at doing the mowing. They said at the moment they don't have the capacity for that, so that was something that they weren't factoring in. They've got a number of of issues, I suppose, they were looking at, even getting the mulch to the site. So they're still trying to work out how they would deliver the project. They've worked through a lot of the water infrastructure, like the stormwater harvesting. Some of that, the cost was prohibitive for some of the works they were looking at the water harvesting. So there is a bit of work, but just specifically on the mowing issue, that was something they didn't have the capacity for at the moment.
So Mr Mayor, so given if there's further discussion or negotiation needed, and it would be, given the procedural resolution was quite specific last week that it come back to this meeting, you would be either lift it from the table or leave it lay on the table until point in time, and that would be procedural, and we would just bring it back then. Just as one thing, when we do leave items lay on the table, it's good practice not to leave them for any longer than 3 months. If an item isn't brought, particularly if it's not moved and seconded and it's just left lie on the table, after a period of time the report dies, so then it becomes a new report. So, and if an item isn't moved or seconded, if a new report is brought with a different recommendation, the item dies anyway. So because something's left lay on the table doesn't mean it will exist forever. So just as a bit of trivia.
Thank you, Mr CEO and General Manager. How does the committee want to proceed with this thoughts, Councillor Duff?
Mr Mayor, I've had a discussion with GMO Mayor as the portfolio holder, and all we were going to do was just add to the conditions that we just support them with the mowing, because I think that it's just support, because initially they were just going to mulch it all down, there wouldn't be any mowing, but once it becomes grassed up, then they don't have any mowers, and that still is in keeping with no cost to council, because we're currently mowing it in any case, so it wouldn't be any extra cost to council. So it was just a matter of just tweaking that one particular condition. So that was what I had a hope we could achieve. But if you wanted to leave it till further discussions, but I think we've probably, everyone's anxious to get this one happening. So just keen to support it if we can. Thank you.
Councillor Potter, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think it's great that these guys want to take over the park, and as Councillor Shoemaker reminded me earlier, that we already do the park anyway, so it's not going to do change too much. My only concern with something like this is that once we do this with one group, is it going to open up the floodgates? Because I've got another community group that is having issues because of the age of the members and members being away, being unable to actually mow some of their lawns and areas. So that's my biggest concern, is opening up the floodgates, and are we setting a precedent? Thank you.
Yes, certainly, Mr Mayor. I'm hearing Councillor Potter, and I understand they're really legitimate concerns. I'm just thinking in terms of our corporate plan and the discussions this council's had, we've talked a lot about genuinely collaborating and engaging and partnering with our community. And I see in this case, I've spoken to with the Bunya Valley Landcare Group, at the moment, they don't have the capacity to mow the park. They really want to focus on staging the development of the park in a safe and practical way. So it's not about coming and digging up the park and you know, taking on more than what they can actually achieve. And I guess for me, I'm happy to discuss the motion now. I would actually like to put the motion back on the table for the committee. So if I'm able to do that, Mr CEO, Lynelle, if we can just copy that committee recommends to council. Yep, and I'd just like to make a couple of adjustments to that.
Councillor, so the first thing, and we're actually starting to delve into debate, so the first thing that would just pure process.
Yep.
Council needs to agree to discuss it today, otherwise we just move on. So that first one, as it's written, just needs to be adopted. It doesn't need to go back to the general because it's a procedural motion to allow the discussion to happen today. So if we get that one out of our hair and then go for the debate.
So we can change the recommendation regarding the mowing. I've got a few suggestions I'd like to...
Once we get the procedural resolution, yeah, absolutely. You guys, it's your resolution.
Take it off the table.
Table first.
Yeah.
So just the first one there, that the trustee permit between council be taken off the table. So if we get that one done, and then we can hook into whether we need to amend it or not.
Okay, council. I'll move a procedural motion that the trustee permit, I can't see it there, Lynelle, sorry, terms between council and Bunya Valley Landcare Incorporated be taken off the table. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. The matter is now been taken off the table, and we can then move to the recommendation, Mr CEO.
Yep, so we had a mover and a seconder, so that's now is what you're debating. So there is nothing, the in favour and against was for the procedural resolution last time, so that's, ignore the bottom bit there. So points 1 to 9 are able to be amended in the accordance with normal procedure. So if you want to add a bit or take a bit or do something different, just floor is yours.
So over to you, Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So further to the discussion we've had, and thank you to council for discussing this matter, I have talked with the committee. It is a deal breaker for them at the moment. At the moment, they don't have the capacity to mow the park. It doesn't mean that they won't have the capacity into the future, but right now they don't have the capacity. And it's my view from the discussions we've had from our corporate plan that we as a council really do, and I value, and like Councillor Potter said, there's some incredible arrangements already in place that our council does do in an effort to try and support our community to achieve better outcomes. So I would like to move that the committee recommend to council I agree with point 1, that South Burnett Regional Council enter into a trustee permit, not exclusive use for the purpose of landscaping with Bunya Valley Land Care, with conditions including term of 3 years at $75 per annum plus GST. The committee to bear all costs of the project and all subsequent operational and maintenance costs. If we can adjust this part to say, including weed and pest management and utility charges, and then just another point, Linnell, so point number 4, that council continue to work with the Bunya Valley Land Care Group and in the initial phases of this agreement, continue mowing Karoo Park with a view to support the Land Care Group as it progresses. The Land Care Group and the project, so support the Land Care Group and the project that council continue to work with the Bunya Valley Land Care Group and in the initial phases of this agreement continue mowing Karoo Park with a view to support the Land Care Group and the project into the future. So concept plan, including the scope and budget with project milestones, be submitted for approval. The committee must seek consent under the licence prior to making applications for planning approvals, including building and planning permits. The committee will undertake community engagement and provide the outcome prior to the commencement of work. The committee will not impede pedestrian access from David Place. The committee must incorporate existing infrastructure into the concept plan and not undertake any works that may affect council-owned infrastructure. Should the trustee permit come to an end, council is not obliged to maintain the improvements made by the committee and has the right to remove any assets or improvements made. So I hereby move that recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, that would be an amendment because it's already been moved and
Thank
seconded.
you.
So yeah, so
So I move the amendment to the
yeah,
recommendation.
if Councillor Potter is the seconder is in agreement and with the leave of the meeting, if that's the will of the meeting, they can be added straight in.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah, and that's the will of the, oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
You're all right, thanks, Mr CEO. So we've had the amended motion put forward there, agreed to by councillors, mover and seconder. Okay, councillors, that's now for council's consideration. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I fully support this because taken on the back of Councillor Henson's remarks on the last item on the agenda, we can go around and around in circles. We need to work with these community groups, give them the opportunity. They've been really pushing the barrow for over 12 months now, and we need to support them. And I like the added point in there that Councillor Shoemaker's added, that we will support them with the view to maybe the community group purchasing a mower or something like that down the track. We might be able to give them some grant funding or whatever. We might be able to help them. But as in regards to Councillor Potter's comments in regards to opening up the floodgates, I think we need to address each particular issue on their merits. I could also throw a couple of ones that around Black Button down in my area that already mow the areas and all that sort of stuff. But again, council has fully supported those to get to the situation where they are, and I think this is another one. And I think anything like this that comes back in the future, we can certainly address it as an individual issue and all that sort of stuff moving forward. But fully support this and would be happy to see these guys given the green light to go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Other councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? Okay, I'd just like to support Councillor Shoemaker's motion. I think it's in the corporate plan. We have in the draft corporate plan that's gone out to the community, we have spoken about empowering volunteers, and clearly this goes to that as a strategic priority of council. Okay, so well, let's go to the vote. Unless Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to speak any further before we wrap up and go to the vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I think this is a really unique partnership. It's a great opportunity for council to improve an area which at the moment, if you drive past Karoo Park, there's not a lot of love in Karoo Park. So I think it's great that this council's supportive and partnering with that group who are genuinely looking to improve the facility for our community moving forward. So thank you, council, for your support.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay, councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. It's now my pleasure to introduce Councillor Shoemaker to present item 7.1 at 104, which is the Regional Development Portfolio Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure I present this month's report. Council representatives recently met with LGAQ Trade and Investment Lead Paul Cranch, and together we spoke about Council's role in regional development and the process for building strong, adaptive and equitable local economies. As Paul explained, effective regional development demands informed leadership from local leaders. I would like to recommend to Council that we engage with Paul further to leverage the resources and expertise available through our LGAQ membership and build upon the cornerstones we have embedded over this past year. To begin, I'd like to share some of the learnings from our discussions with Paul about how we as leaders can continue to help encourage growth and development here in the South Burnett. Lesson 1. Continue to learn about regional development priorities, strategies and stakeholders in our region. I know as elected leaders we always have our ear to the ground for opportunities and trying to understand the current challenges our local businesses and industries face, working quietly behind the scenes to bring this feedback back to Council for discussion and wherever possible solution. The Development Incentive Scheme is an example of this Council's appetite to support growth and development, and it's pleasing to hear project proponents are coming to Council exploring options to maximise this short-term opportunity. Lesson 2. Make sure everyone has access to the same consistent data and information about regional development projects and appoint resources to organise and implement the regional development function of Council. I know there is more work to be undertaken in this space and have been grateful for the opportunities for the regional development portfolio to work hand in hand with our planning portfolio holder, Councillor Henshin, and the planning team, along with the support and guidance of our CEO Mark Pitt and the Executive Services team. I've also had some discussions with Baido and our CEO about fast-tracking work on our regional profile and understand that as our 2021-22 budget discussions unfold and the corporate plan is finalised, Council will be in a better position to determine how we resource this important function of Council into the future. Lesson 3. Listen to all feedback, both positive and negative, and ensure our community knows their views and opinions in relation to the growth and development of our region are being heard. As elected representatives and across our council team, I know we each value the ideas, views and opinions of others, and I believe the establishment of the Regional Development Advisory Committee will only strengthen this council's understanding of the issues and challenges faced and help equip us with local knowledge and expertise to adopt tangible solutions. Lesson 4. Provide consistent and adequate resources in making our community competitive. If we have an opportunity to partner with economic development organisations or hire professionals to lead them, make sure we consider the strengths and qualifications these people bring to the table very carefully. I do believe we are now able to further consider what this looks like for our organisation moving forward. Over this past year, Council's partnership with Baido has provided on-the-ground support and advice to local businesses and industry representatives. I'm keen to build on this in partnership with the Red Earth Community Foundation and continue some of the preliminary conversations held last year about a collaborative approach to a 50-year community plan for the South Burnett. I'd like to invite both parties to meet with Council to discuss this project further so we can set some clear direction moving forward. Council's workshops with the Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning have been instrumental over this past year, and I'd especially like to thank Fiona and her team. And I look forward to continuing this relationship and working together as we focus on the adoption of Council's regional development strategy. Lesson 5. As elected representatives, you, probably just like me, ran for council because you love our community and want to help improve it. This lesson is about us, in our roles as leaders, to be the salespeople of our region, so that others will want to live, work and play here. As elected representatives, I believe we have the capability to make a significant difference in our community through the work we do in building strong working relationships with local business and industry and advocating for change. I was pleased to receive a draft of the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce and Industry Strategic Plan, which I have included in this month's agenda, and welcome opportunities to genuinely collaborate in the regional growth and progression of our region with partners such as these business groups and entities. I know we each get excited every time someone comes forward with an idea or concept that could see growth and development outcomes in our region, particularly employment outcomes, and I've seen firsthand council staff sharing this excitement. The current rate of inquiries and permits for building and planning this council is receiving, along with the growing number of rate searches, is evidence of the numbers of people and families looking for a tree change and currently moving to our region. We know we need more housing, and I know we each realise this is a good problem to have. However, a problem that requires a solution. And I look forward to continuing to work with this team to resolve this, because undoubtedly we all know this is a great place to work, live and play. So as we approach our first year anniversary since being elected to this council, and in reflection, I know we have each had some big ideas, goals and ambitions when it comes to the growth and development of our region. While this portfolio has been impacted by a reduction in physical resources, I'm pleased to report we as elected representatives have been working to equip and shape up this portfolio and the organisation of council to be effective into the future. I'm pleased to report some of the key priorities that we are currently working on include finalising this council's regional development strategy for feedback and adoption, establishing a regional development advisory committee who will be instrumental in supporting council to develop a pipeline of concepts and investigate shovel-ready projects that will help drive growth and development. Preparing feedback to inform the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan. Finalising council's work in investment readiness, offering investors a clear opportunity that enables them to be a part of the South Burnett's growth story. Working to reduce red tape and fast-track services in planning and development. The recent adoption of the Economic Instrument and major planning scheme amendments are examples of how this council is progressing this important work. Consider our partnerships locally in industry-led tourism outcomes into the future and investing in tourism assets and infrastructure. Looking at opportunities to work hand in hand with our regional tourism operator, Southern Queensland Country Tourism, to market our region on both a state, national and international platform. Partnering in our region's major events through our community grants and in-kind support. Supporting the livability of our region and lifestyle of our residents in an effort to attract and maintain workforce capabilities, meaning people aren't driving in and out, they are living here, being part of this incredible region. So in closing, I'd like to acknowledge that despite the difficulties of 2020, our region has performed better than most, which is testament to the diversity of our economy and resilience of our business community. While the South Burnett's economic diversity is enviable and is by far one of our greatest strengths, we must always be looking for opportunities to grow and diversify further, keeping our eye on the next big thing. I believe here at Council, with the resources we have, we are doing just that. I look forward to ticking these strategic projects off our to-do list over these coming months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that my regional development portfolio report be accepted.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, do we have a seconder? Thanks, councillor Henshin. Councillors, questions, comments? Thanks, councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the comment you made about needing more housing, I'd actually like the community to know that we've actually had people from who have moved to the area but actually had to move away. And these are professional people that have had to go back to Brisbane and the Gold Coast because they could not get housing. Now, as a member of the community, knowing the trying to get our professionals here to the area, we are in a really sad state right now, and I just don't think people realise how bad the situation is. When we've got professionals moving back to other areas because they can't get housing here, that's a big issue, Mr. Mayor. Another point, with regards to, you also made a comment about us being the leaders and salesperson of our region. I was also asked if, I know we've got the videos that we did, that Economic Development did, but I was just wondering if there's a brochure that we have, or could think about doing a brochure with regards to the tourism side of things, about not so much about the accommodation and that, but, you know, the good things about why you'd want to move to the area. I know the camping shops probably need to sell more tents, but I think if we could do a brochure to try and entice the people to the area again, and I think with some of these new developments that are happening, I think we should be in a better position later on to have the people here. So if we could think about that brochure, that would be great. And the other one was, this is probably a really good plug now, for the South Burnett Young Professionals. There'll be a function at the end of April for all South Burnett Young Professionals. And if you're wondering if you're young or a professional, I do go to them. I wouldn't class me as that young, but as one of the people that help organise it, along with some other members, I would like to invite anyone in the region to the function, so please follow the South Burnett Young Professionals Facebook page. We're planning a scavenger hunt, and hopefully we should get a few people along, and so they can help make connections within the South Burnett with our locals. And with regards to the professionals part, I class anyone in a job as a professional, so I don't care if you're an apiarist, a builder, a doctor, I really don't care. We just need to connect the people that are new to the area to the people that live in the area, so they have those connections that they can build on to stay.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Potter. Other councillors? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree 100% with Councillor Potter and with the housing. Similarly in Wandai and Mergen, no houses to rent or to purchase, so it's a huge issue for our region. If we're trying to entice people to our region, we've got nowhere for them to buy or live at the moment, or even rent. It's an issue. And I also just wanted to ask Councillor Shoemaker about, you talked about working closely with our regional tourism organisation and also our local one. Just wondering how you're tracking with the Visit South Burnett and the relationship with the Visit South Burnett and where that's at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. In terms of the housing issue, I absolutely agree. It's a big problem. And we as a council, we could sit here and throw our head in our hands and say, well, that's a big problem. I fear maybe that's been happening in our region for too long, and that's why we've reached the situation that we have where people are moving out of the region. So as a council, my challenge to each of you is to come back with a solution, because that's really what this region needs. We need a solution. And I know that solution, yes, Councillor Jones, is build more houses, but that's not as easy as it seems. And certainly I know GM O'May, there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes to try and get some more resources in our building and plumbing teams to help with those housing outcomes when they're actually here ready to build. But there is, and I do hope, I have been looking at, what other regions could we potentially learn from in this space. And I know the Mayor's got connections with Bundaberg and has talked about some of the growth and development they've had there. It is a real problem, and we as councillors need to unpack that. I don't know whether we can have a workshop or a discussion around what available land we have, what some of the opportunities are. I know I've highlighted a couple of parks around the place that maybe we can consider. One in particular, we could consider whether it may be better purposed being some residential land in Kingaroy, some cheap, affordable residential land. there is definitely, I've been trying to think through what that solution looks like, Councillor Duff and Councillor Potter, certainly looking at other regions, and I welcome this team's feedback in that regard, because certainly as leaders, we do need to step up. We need to recognise that is a problem and see what we can actually do to inspire some change. I know that's not all us, and I think the connections we have with, you know, some of the feedback we get from state development, some of those external parties we may be able to meet with, I know may help us in that regard. I think it's a serious issue that we do need to turn our minds to. In terms of the Visit South Burnett relationship, we have CEO Mark just has recently written to Visit South Burnett and requested an update on their progress. And I look forward to that update, Councillor Duff. I haven't received any further information of late, and I really do welcome that progress. I think it's important that we are turning our minds to those budget discussions. When we started the partnership, the original partnership document was signed in October, so it was for a 6-month period, so it's timely that we get a report in terms of their progress and future direction and where we go from here. So I welcome that report. We did, as a council, it's been clear from the beginning, this is a partnership. We knew there would be challenges, and certainly I thank CEO Mark and the team for all the help that has gone into supporting and partnering in a positive way, and certainly I welcome that report. I welcome an update from Visit South Burnett, and particularly when we look at our tourism strategy, I understand they are working on a tourism strategy. I do welcome an update on that, because I think going forward that will be really instrumental as to how we progress tourism outcomes in the region, definitely. Just a bit of a plug, I did have a conversation with Joe Prendergast at Dusty Hill just this last week. It's incredible, $6.5 million development in our region, really incredible. And it just goes to show that, you know, by starting small but thinking big, you really can get there. So hats off to Joe and the Dusty Hill team and the work that's happening in our region in terms of really growing and bolstering our tourism industry. It's fabulous. I think it's great. I congratulate Visit South Burnett. It's great that they've got up to, I believe they're close to 100 members. It's a great opportunity for us as a council to get that industry feedback in terms of what they need for infrastructure, so we can start making some decisions in that regard. So no, welcome the update, and thank you for the question.
Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Here's an idea I prepared earlier with regards to the housing issue. The tiny house project. I don't know, some of you may have heard of it. It's where they get the block of land and they put the tiny homes on them, and then they have a central area where people can congregate and, you know, with the laundry and things like that. And it's specifically meant for people who can't get housing or are finding it hard to get housing in the area. So it might be because you in a smaller block of land, you can probably fit a lot more of these tiny homes on, as opposed to building a big block of units.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I'd just like to make a couple of observations and questions for Councillor. Number one, I think that the housing shortage issue is something that's come upon us, in fact, in recent times, pursuant to the regional drift rising from COVID. So just wanted to, you know, it's something that's really probably caught us off guard. We didn't expect this, but to acknowledge the work that Council has done with our DIS, our Development Incentive Scheme, that was put in place to fuel subdivision for a number of reasons. A number of different development opportunities, but importantly, at the core of that was to fuel residential subdivision. We're not necessarily, from the data I see, seeing an uptake in residential subdivision for the construction of new homes. So the supply, I think, is clearly falling short of the demand. Part of that, I think, is market conditions in relation to the fact that the pricing around allotments in areas, in other regional areas, is much greater, so there's perhaps more margin in it for the developers to go to Toowoomba or somewhere like that, where the market at this point in time here is such that the margins aren't there to the same extent, even with the 75% reduction that we've offered as a council. The other thing I think is important to note is the work that council is continuing to do, and certainly want to see more work done in relation to one of your points there, working to reduce red tape and fast-track services and planning and development. And I think we've still got some way to go there, and I'm happy to acknowledge that to the community, that there is some work to do there. We have a significant number of building and plumbing certification matters coming through the system now, and as a council, CEO, and I've had conversations around this with the general managers about how we can attend to that. It's really tough to get building certifiers and plumbing certifiers because they're all so busy right across Queensland at the moment as the construction economy is booming as a result of the government incentives, the rebate system. So we'll keep working on that in terms of trying to provide more resources very quickly into that space. The other thing is that in terms of opportunities to work hand in hand with our regional tourism operator, SQCT, Southern Queensland Country Tourism in Toowoomba, Councillor, I had a conversation with our local member at Parliament recently, and she raised this as probably her number one issue, and she had questions for me as to, how much money are they given? Do we get value for money as a council? So I said I'd take those on notice and take that back to our council. Perhaps that's something we can do further work on. We've had a meeting with that group recently, and perhaps we can do further work there, perhaps another workshop to just explore how perhaps SQCT can provide us. And I'd certainly be keen to provide a response to our local member. Our local member was concerned that perhaps there's not enough being done to promote South Bennett region as a destination for tourists. And the other thing I think was in relation to informing the Wide Bay Regional Plan. We've got our meeting, the CEO are attending with the Minister on Thursday in Harvey Bay, and we'll be starting the process of putting together the regional plan, and very keen to hear from Council, Senior Executive. If you have any thoughts, feedback, input to go into that regional plan, please come forward and respond to my emails. I'd be really pleased to get your input into that as well. Thank you. So look, a few observations there. Probably the only question is in relation to particularly that Southern Queensland Country Tourism. Councillor, is that something that we can perhaps look at in response to the local member? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, CEO Mark. So at the moment, you're absolutely right. Southern Queensland, CEO Mark. Far out. Mayor Otto, I was up too late last night reading agendas, I can tell you. We can certainly, Peter Homan was here, only a couple of weeks ago. He stood in this chamber and we had a workshop about what Southern Queensland Country Tourism, a partnership, an actual paying membership. So we are at the moment, South Bennett is the only non-paying member of Southern Queensland Country Tourism, and definitely Southern Queensland Country Tourism does receive funding from the state to promote our region. I do think there is work to be done there, and I welcome the opportunity to have some more conversations with council. So I don't know, CEO Mark, whether we might be able to set up a workshop or something to unpack some of these issues with council. I think being that we don't have an economic development officer, certainly I know I've been doing a lot of work myself and I'd welcome some support. So if there is an opportunity for council to come together and table some of these and we can have some more discussion, I'd welcome that. I see that critical in terms of the regional development finalisation, and I'll be working with Councillor Henshin and yourself through the subcommittee we've developed for the regional plan to start to really look at that. So if perhaps, CEO Mark, we can set up that workshop so we can prioritise regional development for our council.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Mayor. I noted it as we'll fold it into the notes as a resolved action from the Mayor's comments. So, yep, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And CEO, the other thing I suppose in terms of residential land development, and we just haven't seen, as I said, the uptake to our incentive scheme. Councillor, do you see any strategies there as to how we could perhaps fuel some growth there? Do we need to bring in some of the local developers and builders and perhaps start to have a conversation with them as part of our community engagement to perhaps get a better understanding of what else perhaps council can do in that space? Do you see value in that, or do you have any other strategies you'd recommend at this stage?
Definitely. I know we did a lot of footwork in the lead up to adopting the strategy in terms of meeting and listening and hearing the views and opinions of various stakeholders in the region. So I definitely think communication, I have had some feedback. I don't know what that looks like or how we actually target some of these people, but I'm welcome the opportunity to look at that further. I think there aren't, our meeting just the other day with Mr. DeLuca, he wasn't aware of the incentives scheme. So it was great to actually meet with him face to face and say, make sure you check it out. It's on council's website. I think there's a real need for a concentrated communication strategy around that development scheme. I know we've sent out a couple of media releases and things, and I know yourself, Mr. Mayor, as our spokesperson, has promoted this, but I think we do need to consider a more targeted communication strategy for the scheme.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Seow, we could perhaps note that more of a targeted approach to promoting the development incentive scheme. I agree that I've been speaking to builders all the time. I was speaking to a builder just on the weekend, a prominent builder in the South Bend who wasn't aware of it. And I've certainly been banging on about it every time I'm on the radio. I'm banging on about the development incentive scheme. I'm sharing the word. I've been writing stories in the newspaper about it and Burnett today. But you're right, we just for some reason aren't getting cut through in terms of that message out to the key players. I think the other thing too is that I would be keen to perhaps convene a larger community engagement process with builders and developers. Perhaps we can find out, are there roadblocks? Are there issues? Why are the reasons perhaps we're not getting the uptake on land development across the region, and try to get a bit more information on that, if that's perhaps something we could note to do. And the other thing is just to note that we are in the process of appointing another planning staff member who'll be looking at land use assessments, and we'll be keen to see some of that work come through as we look at what council land can we divest of that could give rise to residential subdivisions, and also what commercial land do we have. We have a large block of commercial land in the centre of Kingaroy at the moment, for example. We need to really start to bring forward consideration of what we're doing with that land, because now the time is right. We have residential and commercial demand on our doorstep. So thank you, Mr. Seow. If we could note that, that'd be much appreciated. Okay, back to you, Councillor.
Yeah, I agree, certainly. I think the development, there'd been a lot of work. When I talk about investment readiness, I've had a good look, and there'd been a lot of work the Department of State Development did during the last term of council in that space. I've certainly got the maps and the information around, what parcels of land might be available in town, and I'd welcome the opportunity, I think, to get maybe a couple of councillors together and some of our staff, and to really start shaping that up a little bit more, put some meat around it. I think there's some great work that had been done during the last term that we need to build on, and it really has come down to resources for our team, I have to say. Mayor Otto, I know CEO Mark's and his team, and it's been great to partner with the set and different projects and activities, but there is going to come a point where we do need to consider how we resource regional development going forward. Because certainly every report you see, I write myself, everything that you get. So we do, there is a gap there. I know it's an important priority for council. Growth and prosperity of our region is an important priority for council, certainly through the corporate planning process. I know there's much more work to be done in that space in terms of how we resource that priority going forward.
And Councillor, if I could just call on your good grace for one further question. You've noted in here that over this year, Council's partnership with Boyedo has provided on-the-ground support and advice to local business and industry representatives. You're keen to build on this in partnership with the Red Earth Community Foundation. I understand, so Council's in the process of starting to move into developing our own regional development strategy. How would you see, how is that forming up in your mind in terms of how do you see Council working with Boyedo and Red Earth Community moving forward? You talk about building on that. How do you see us building on that in relation to Red Earth are doing work around a development strategy, we're doing a development strategy. How do you see the two of those syncing moving forward?
Yeah, sure. I see them as completely different strategies. The community strategy that Red Earth and Vaido have been talking about, and I know you've been involved in some preliminary discussions, is really about that 50-year long-term vision and for our region. So council, along with every other business, industry, community member, would be a partner in that discussion. I would like to think that we would work with those groups, and I would like to think that it's really about empowering our community and the key people in our community to lead a discussion about what the future might look like in 50 years' time here in the South Burnett. It's a long-term plan and a long-term view, and I know the Red Earth Community Foundation, they've just finished another year of the Community Leadership Program. There's over 100 members, key members in their alumni, and I think it's a great opportunity to tap into their connections along with Vaido and really take a good, long, hard look at the next 50 years here in our region. I see council very much as a partner in that discussion. They're going to lead the discussion anyway, is my understanding, and I think it's important that we're at the table, we're a partner in that discussion, Mr. Mayor. In terms of our regional development strategy, I think that's really more around council setting the tone now over the next 5 years in terms of what the key priorities will be. And we've talked a lot about manufacturing, value-adding food processing, empowering our agricultural industry, supporting tourism outcomes, and these are some of the key pillars of that draft strategy that the previous council had put together. So, yeah, I think they're similar but different, and I welcome more conversation. I think through the workshop that we'll set up, we'll have really good conversation with the team about some of these plans and our framework going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. I apologise for continuing this matter, but it's a really important conversation. You've brought up some really important points here. Regional development, economic development is a big factor. Job creation is such a big, one of those really big significant pillars for our region, our corporate plan. I would note that when I first, you spoke there about Council's regional development strategy. In my very first press conference I had, South Burnett Online asked the question, will Council be ensuring that in its future economic development strategy there are KPIs that the community can be informed about in terms of what are we achieving for the money that we're spending? Perhaps there was a feeling that maybe that hadn't been historically done as well as it could have. Are you expecting that we'll have those KPIs for the community that we can monitor Council's performance on and delivering on that strategy, and we'll be able to report real, meaty KPIs and performance for Council around that? Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor. I talk about KPIs all the time. I'm certainly, if you can't measure it, I don't see the point myself. I think perhaps the regional development strategy is about that vision, where we want to go. It's about thinking bigger, and it doesn't have to have all the solutions, but it does need to have some clear direction in terms of what we see as key priorities. In terms of measuring that, key KPIs, I think we would need to resource that. So I think the delivery of that strategy, that's going to be the piece where the rubber really hits the road for Council. We can set the strategy. It will be our role as a Council to resource how we're going to deliver that, and whether that's maintaining our partnership with Vaido, whether that's, it could be a combination of things, I guess is what I'm thinking. So I welcome more conversations about that, definitely. I think we will need to measure our success, definitely, and if we have a clear plan, we can do that. So at the moment, for me, it's about setting that strategy. What is the vision for the people of the region? What are the growth opportunities? How will we as a region, what are we going to focus on to really be, when I say the next growth story, what does that look like? And then certainly it will be up to us as Council to decide how we resource the delivery of that strategy, and then actually have something that we can report back to the community, those meaty things. Because at the moment it's a bit of everyone's doing a little bit. So yeah, I'm hearing you and keen. I think this is really important work, really important conversation, and really value the opportunity and Council's time today talk about this, because we really are going to have to, in the lead up to the budget discussions, if it's a core pillar of our corporate plan, how are we going to achieve regional growth and prosperity?
Thank you, Councillor. And I think the question was about making sure that we learn perhaps from, we take, as you use the term learnings, that there's plenty of learnings from the last 5 years of council and how we did ED. And perhaps, as you're saying, how do we best resource it moving forward to make sure that we're hitting those KPIs that we set and that we are kicking some good goals in supporting and facilitating investment and employment growth in our region. You mentioned on Bahido there, I know Council, we funded through our grants program from the federal government $25,000 for a business expansion, small business extension program, and I've talked a lot about the fact that we wanted to see that go broadly across the region, because Bahido are in Mergen, and we really wanted to see them working with small businesses right across the region, out, right out to Blackbutt and Banarkin and places. Council, are we having a report come forward at some stage as to what's been delivered, what are the outcomes, what are the KPIs that have been ticked on that small business extension program?
Certainly, see, Mayor Otto. CEO Mark, if I can just flick to you, as part of the partnership agreement, you do manage the partnership agreement on behalf of council. It's my understanding there are quarterly reports that comes to council, but I do think you're right, Mr. Mayor, it is time to have that conversation about what we've been receiving those reports. We've had some discussions with Bahido, so it's really about, well, what's next? Yeah, and what has been achieved, what's next? Certainly I'm hearing you. And CEO Mark, if you can provide any further clarity around that, that would be great.
Thanks, Councillor, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, the Bahido's regular reporting is there, and also councillors being a little bit shy as far as that she's got a report on page 134 of this month's agenda as well. So you'll note in there the Bahido, it was attached at request of the council at the Bahido North Burnett, taking care of business leadership, small business workshops. So the report is the reason, and I was going to talk to that when we got to it, why are we putting North Burnett? That's the example of what's coming for us if council agrees to it, having the small business workshop. So something like that will roll out through May, June, all things being equal. Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Mr. CEO. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, the first one, Councillor Shoemaker's challenge to come up with a solution. I think we've got some, possibly have some residential blocks of land that council may own through acquirement over a period of time. Now, if there's builders not out there that are willing to purchase those blocks off us, and I know it's not core business, maybe council can look to employing somebody to build houses there, knowing that if the demand is there to certainly warrant it, maybe we can get rid of some of our excess land that we've got. In that regard, it may not be a possibility, but just something to throw out there. With the development incentive scheme, I've just got a couple of questions around that and the in regards to a 50% reduction. Now, I know that I've said this before, I've supported it, but it does make me nervous. With the development incentive schemes and the 50% reduction in fees and charges for a developer, who is indirectly, or who would have to, that 50% shortfall from the developer's contribution, where would that fall and who would it indirectly affect if we were to do that? If someone come along and done a residential development moving forward, the 50% reduction in the fees and charges for trunk infrastructure and headworks and all that sort of stuff, and just there, who would be indirectly affected? Where would the shortfall have to come from in regards to that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. If I could just clarify that the residential, in relation to urban residential, the discount is 75%, pursuant to the developer entering into a infrastructure agreement through our planning department with council, and the rural residential incentive is in fact 100%. So it's 75% and 100%. When you talk about fees and charges, just to clarify for the community, fees and charges in relation to application fees are not discounted because they cover the costs of our staff having to actually do the work. So there's a body of work that has to be done. So we're simply recovering the cost of resourcing it with our professional people to do that work, but it applies to the local government infrastructure program, LGIP, what commonly known by developers as headworks fees. So just for the community, if anyone's watching, it's 75% on LGIP charges for urban residential and 100% for rural residential in that case. General managers, Mr. CEO, I might turn to our senior executive team to provide any commentary in relation to the councillor's questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a suggestion? Given that's a pretty big old question, can we actually bring that back as a report? And then that way, rather than anyone shooting off the cuff today and given time as well, that one, if that's suitable to yourself, that may be just a good question to bring back as a report, and I'll just make a note and we can do that. Anyway, up to you. Other than that, it basically is the very long answer short. Is that those development fees would go into restricted, or is it, I use the old language of reserve, and they'd be used in future capital programs. So it would be an issue into future capital funding that money wouldn't be available. So that would be then, so this is a very non-accountant answer, but this is a Mark answer. That money would then be brought out of other funding sources. But that's why I say I'd probably like to get you a better quality answer if I can, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. That would seem to be a reasonable response. You happy with that, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And yeah, I should have said you could take it on notice, Mr. CEO. Sorry about that, because I do know that there's a lot of work needed to explain and show all that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. If we could perhaps have a report brought back, would it be possible to bring that back to, in a month's time, Mr. CEO, to the April Finance and Corporate, or happy with that? Thanks very much. Okay, so we've got the recommendation there, but the Regional Development Portfolio Report to Council will be received for information. I've got a mover and a seconder. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Move on to 7.2, which is the Economic Development and Tourism Monthly Update at 107, and might just hand over to our CEO to give us a brief introduction and overview. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. Monthly report on stats and activity, and with the attachments, the Tourism Sentiment Index, and I think I'm happy to report by exception and just answer questions.
Mr. CEO, I was told last night at Banarkin, and we had a great meeting down there, Councillor Jones and I, with the Banarkin community, just a wonderful group of people, so positive about their community, and I'm really looking forward to doing some good work over the next 3 years to support them. And they were telling me that there's 350, I think, motorhomes moving through Blackbutt or somewhere at the moment. So isn't that great to see in Blackbutt? And also want to note here that Gwen Woodall, who's volunteered at the centre for over 14 years, and our Vic has now retired. Farewell lunch for her. So I just wanted to acknowledge Gwen. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Thank you. Other councillors, any questions, comments before we accept it? Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just having a look at that report, and I know we met with Southern Queensland Country Tourism. We have a couple of times, and they've talked about the work they've been doing. So that Tourism Sentiment Index is from their platform, where they are taking all of our data when we're in an area through your mobile phones and your credit card transactions, and trying to make that data actually make sense, and inform it, use it in a way that informs our tourism strategies going forward. One key point that I noticed from the report, it says that so in terms of calculating a score, just for an example, the tourism sentiment score formula, so the report here says on page 116 that 60% of all conversations related to the South Burnett have been positive conversations. We've had 2% of those online conversations that have been detractors, and so our current tourism sentiment score, you times that by 100, gives us a score of 58. For me, I think a key, when we talk about key performance indicators and moving forward, I think we really need to spend some time looking at these metrics. I certainly would like to see that tourism sentiment with Council's partnership with Visit South Burnett, and certainly whatever our forward partnerships or discussions with Southern Queensland Country Tourism might look like, I'd certainly like to see that score increase, because it's my understanding that when it comes to tourism, it's about getting them here. That's the first thing. When it comes to destinational marketing, you're marketing to get your tourists here in the South Burnett. The second thing is making sure they go home with a really good story to tell, so that they encourage others to come to the area. So I believe we can, challenge our region. I believe we can do better than 58. I actually think with a beautiful country towns like ours and the beautiful natural assets that we have, I think we can improve that score. And I certainly look forward to more discussions with Visit South Burnett in regards to that moving forward.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'd just like to bring to Councillor Chambers' attention with our visitor information centres there and the facts and figures on page 108, and I've asked Councillor Duff, but there's so much goes on within our South Burnett region, but if you look at the sales at the Visitor Information Centre in Mergen, in the month of November, with a previous monthly spend of roughly $600 to $700, there's $7,170 there. As to whether that may be a misprint, and I hope not. And I just asked Councillor Duff, could that have possibly been something out at BP Dam with Troy Casadali or a concert in relation to that? Those figures are sensational, and these statistics back up a lot of things, what's going on within the South Burnett. I'd also like to acknowledge there as well, in the volunteer numbers there, we held a luncheon for our volunteers prior to Christmas, and the numbers there were sensational. And again, the statistics here back up just wonderful support we have in our VIC centres, in all our centres in Blackbutt, Kingaroy, Mergen and Ango and Wandoi. So there's some really great figures in those statistics. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Henson. Some good positive news isn't there, as you say. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I think it's pretty appropriate there that Councillor Shoemaker's comments wanting to see that go above 58. I think the work that this council's proposing right through our regional town network, Blackbutt, Cumbia, Proston, Mergen, Wandoi, Nanango, the whole lot, Kingaroy, I think it's very appropriate that we're addressing those situations now with the tourism at the level it is, because they can't go overseas or anything like that. I think it's a perfect time. So that's all working in well. Just a quick update on the Blackbutt caravans. They've got the solos that are down there at the moment, 350 odd vans. They're expecting $80,000 to $100,000 to be spent in Blackbutt alone. And they're saying that every dollar spent in Blackbutt will go to equates to $3.80 across our South Burnett region. So that's an enormous boost for our economy. In the fact, and those figures were written in a good story by South Burnett Online. And just a quick touch on the not Visit South Burnett, the VIC centres. Have a lot of comments that the community think that they're a very, very important contact point for our tourism at the moment. And I have a lot of comments that, knowing that they're very, very expensive to run and maintain and all that sort of stuff, the upkeep and all that, but it is a situation that's cited in the community or viewed in the community as very important for a first contact point for our visitors coming into the South Burnett. So maybe that's something that we can discuss further down the track as well.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Councillors, other comments before we put it to the vote? Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Oh, did we not have a mover and seconder? Oh, we had a move. Did we? Oh, sorry. Okay, so Councillor Shoemaker. Sorry, we've moved on from yours, haven't we? I'm starting to fatigue here. Okay, so we got a mover. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Henson. So we're voting on the. I can't see that the ED and Tourism monthly update for February be received for information. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Sorry, Lionel. Thanks for keeping me on track. Okay, let's go to 7.4, the small sorry, 7.3, Adventure Tourism, Gordon Brook Dam proposal. Councillors, am I staying in or leaving? Am I staying? Okay, thank you. Okay, so 7.3 at 125. And Mr. CEO, I might again just get you to give us introduction to that one. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would defer to the councillor. It's a report for information and just shows some of the very good work that they're doing out there in getting themselves. They're a very active little community, well, not a little community group, but they're a very active community group that's trying to do some really good things. So I would be very happy to pass over to the councillor as well.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I did put this report forward. I think it's an excellent proposal, and it shows probably further to this discussions we've had about Karoo Park and other partnerships. I think that it shows how council, using some land that potentially wasn't being used, entering into a partnership with the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club, has ended up, being, I guess, the foundation for the development of growing adventure tourism in the South Burnett. So I think it's a great story. I know the club are working hard to get some funding to help, and some of the areas, the things they are looking at doing out at Gordon Brook Dam include a mountain bike skills area, and pump track. That's an area for learners like myself, should I be brave enough to really sort of practice their skills, and in sort of an environment where they can be supervised by their parents or by other people at the park. The dual slalom mountain bike trail, if that comes off, the South Burnett will be one of the only places within a significant distance. I believe we will be potentially the only place in southeast Queensland that will have that facility, and that enables racing basically in a different sort of sense, and it'll be a real point of difference for the Gordon Brook Mountain Bike Park. The 15 kilometres of additional mountain bike trails, really bringing the total trail length to approximately 20 kilometres. The few times that I have been out to the park, it's incredible how many people are there. And the other day when I was there with GM Peter O'May, there's a group of young people who have actually ridden their push bikes from Kingaroy to Gordon Brook Dam and used the back tracks, I guess, off the rail trail to then go and use the facility after school. Like, how fabulous is that? Actually, young people engaging in, health and fitness using our facilities. It's such a great outcome, and it was great to see such a big group of people there, for the middle of the week on Tuesday afternoon. And the trailhead with trail map, directional and safety signage and picnic facilities. I see this actually as something that is really important moving forward. I took my family out to the Wandi Trails recently, and some of the signage there is really tricky when you get on the trails, and I know there's some work that's been done through our Works for Queensland funding to help that group with some signage, and I know they're actively seeking funding to try to really grow the facility. So there's a plan there, there's a proposal there. I probably just had a question for GM O'May, just thinking through this. We talked about, at the moment, some of the lease that the South Burnett Mountain Bike Group have over that area. For them to develop some of these trails, they'll need to change the boundary of that lease. And so probably just chasing an update from GM O'May as to where things might be at with those discussions. If you can, Peter, or even come back, I've taken on notice and come back.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll take some of the question on notice. Just so it is something we will bring back to council. So the issue is the initial lease had a 100 metre buffer zone from the quarry. So some of the stuff that they were looking at doing, particularly the skills park and dual slalom, which are sort of key areas of the development, were caught up in that buffer. So we want to revisit that buffer, because it was probably an arbitrary conservative figure to get that buffer zone in there. We've done the on-site inspection, that part of the quarry. It's not going to expand that way at all. So we do want to re-look at that. The skills park and dual slalom, they are sort of down south of the quarry anyway. So that will come back to council just to probably look at a revised lease area there. Some of the larger tracks up, we've just on the back, we've just got to make sure that the tenure and just investigate those. So that will come back to council, a report on those.
Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to bring some of this into perspective, if anyone's done any research online with regards to mountain biking, down at Derby in Tasmania, Regional Development Australia actually helped the Dorset Council set up the Derby track with funding and things like that. So, and they've had quite a few national championships since then. The average monthly visitor to that area, to Derby itself, is about 1,000 a month, and 1,000 visitors a month. They have had, in some instances, up to 30,000 a year, which is really quite incredible for such a small area. So this is just an amazing what they're trying to do, and I will support this as much as I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very supportive of what's happening here and support Councillor Shoemaker in helping this group progress. They're a fantastic group, and one of their things they're doing are monthly rides in and around the South Burn, and only recently they travelled out to Proston. I happened to be there that day, and they went into all the shops, and they also had lunch at the Golden Spurs, spent a lot of money in the town. So they are certainly walking the talk, so very keen to support this group in any way, shape or form we can. Thank you.
Councillor Potter, back to you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I meant to add this before. So on page 132 of the report, with their budget, item number 8, it's got shelters and barbecues, and I'm just wondering, through you, Mrs. CEO, you might have to take this on notice, or whether we're able to use some of the shelters from our Parks Renewal projects for these guys, whether that would help them out or not. Thank you.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just if Councillor Potter's talking about the current worship queens and stuff, that's been allocated, so it would be too late to swap that over to a different project. We did support this group through the worship queens and with the railhead signage. But
No, sorry, what I meant is our old shelters that we're getting rid of, are we able to give them to the mountain bike club, the ones we were...
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, could certainly look at that if we've got old shelters that we can repurpose.
Thanks, General Manager and Councillor. Councillors, any other comments, questions, observations in relation to the matter? Okay, so the recommendation is that the report be received for information. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.4, small business support at 134. Over to you, Mr. CEO. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, it's there's 2 initiatives that have come up with BIEDO participation during Small Business Month in May, and then there's also the Queensland Small Business Friendly Council initiative, and we're basically suggesting that we would like to be party to both.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors, any questions for our CEO before we move on the matter? No? Okay. The recommendation is there as presented. Do we have a mover? Okay. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker again. Councillor Fryloff has seconded. Speakers for or against? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. CEO, for bringing that forward. 7.5 is the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee draft terms of reference at 142. I might hand to you again. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Literally, they're draft terms of reference, so they're being developed in accordance with Council's resolutions. Once the terms of reference are settled, it'll be a case of then going out and finding some members.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors, questions for our CEO before we go to the vote? Okay, do we have a mover for the motion? Thank you. Councillor Fryloff, seconder. Yep, thanks, Councillor Henson. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.6, South Burnett Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, draft terms of reference at 148. Again to you. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
A repeat of the last one. So it's the drafting up of the TOR, and then it's the next stage in getting these committees up and running.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So wonderful to see again that we've now progressed even further with this. We've now got our terms of reference there for council to consider, and the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee draft terms of reference be adopted. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Councillors wishing to speak for or against. Any questions? Okay, if not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Very much looking forward now to that progressing for both of those advisory committees to seeing the positions being called for and filled over the coming months. Thank you. Okay, now 7.7 is committee is the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce draft strategic plan at 153. Mr. CEO, could you let us in again on that? Thank you.
Again, Councillor Shoemaker, if I can defer to her, there was a request just to put it on the agenda. It was launched, for want of a better term, the other night at their meeting. I think it's still in draft, correct? Yeah. And it's just presented for information, and I suggest any feedback.
Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to give us an introduction? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's true. At the meet and greet the other day, the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce presented their draft strategic plan. Certainly like to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce. I know there's been a lot of work since the business breakfast we held last year. This is kind of where those discussions with Gympie Chamber of Commerce have landed, really. Started in terms of being really clear in terms of how the Chamber of Commerce could support the progression of our region moving forward through its relationships, its connections, its diversity, and its leadership. So really, I just wanted to put this before council. It is open for feedback at the moment. I'd like to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce. I think that the draft is great, and it's just so great to see them step up and really take that leadership role, being our local Chamber of Commerce. So it's really there for council's information. You can provide feedback. I'll be collecting some feedback. If you'd like to send it to me, I'm happy to share it, or send it directly to the chamber. It's just there for your information. There are 5 key strategic themes moving forward, in which the plan's been based on is regional progression, relationships, connections, network diversity and leadership. And I do see council being a partner in the progression of their core objectives. So, yeah, it's just there for information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I actually would like to mention something else that the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce industry are doing as well. In light of the suicide rate within the South Burnett, they've actually got a new program that they're doing called SMILE, and what it means is supporting mental health through information, leadership and education. And I'm very happy that the business community has now taken this on board with regards to suicide prevention training for their employees, because this is very important. I believe every single business in the South Burnett should have members trained in suicide prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Mr. CEO, it would be nice if we could send a letter to the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce congratulating them on the preparation of the draft strategic plan and also the SMILE program. I'd be happy to sign that under the Mayor's, from the Office of the Mayor. That would be wonderful. If we could, thank you. If Council thinks something that's worth doing. Yep. Council, Committee, okay, so we have the report there, received for information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Duff. No further questions. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Council, we have a notice of motion at 8.1. Independent accounting analysis can be found at 167 of your agenda. I'll leave this one in. So I just hereby give notice at the. I gave notice that at this committee meeting. I intend to move the following motion. The motion is as follows: that South Bennett Regional Council will engage an appropriately independent qualified person to conduct an independent accounting analysis on asset valuation and liability, with particular focus on any duplication of assets and options for unfunding depreciation of suitably identified assets, with a view to inform the 2022-2023 budget deliberations. I hereby move such and commend the motion to Council. Council, we have a seconder for such. Thank you, Councillor Duff. On that basis, we'll now move into debate on the matter. So I've put this forward on the basis of figures that come forward, and I would like to just temper this statement by making it clear that these really are, again, only estimates. So we're in the early stages of our budget deliberations, and we have received some very early preliminary draft 10-year forecasts. Now, those 10-year forecasts indicate that that the council will not come out of deficit potentially in this term of council. Indeed, the accumulated deficit over the 4 years of this term of council is quite significant. I'm not going to put the figure out there now because there's more work to be done in terms of the financial analysis to really pin these numbers down accurately. They are only broad estimates. So on that basis, I am concerned that council is going to run 4 years worth of deficits may potentially run 4 years worth of deficits, over this term of council. We know that a significant part of that is our depreciation expense, which is going to be ramping up to around 23 million by year 3 of our term. And that does constitute a significant percentage of our expenditure, and indeed a significant percentage of our revenue that we get in goes to funding depreciation. So the intent here is to have an independent study undertaken between now and this time next year, so that when we sit down to do the 22-23 budget, we've got a much better understanding of where we're sitting with our depreciation expenditure, with our asset valuation, to be able to get some real rigour around that, make sure that it's got a high level of veracity in terms of its accuracy and completeness. So, look, that's really it. Wanting to make sure that we are not missing anything in that depreciation. I am concerned that there could potentially be, in some cases, duplication of assets, or assets that council may choose not to depreciate because we're of a mind that we wouldn't replace them should the asset cease to exist. So, look, that's it, Council. We'll put that forward to the committee. Open to other councillors to speak for or against. Thank you. Councillor Froloff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, if you're looking for an external consultant, auditor, who would you be looking at, and how much is that going to cost us?
So, Councillor Froloff, that would be a matter for procurement and our CEO. I certainly would not be entering into that process. Look, the costing hasn't been undertaken at this stage, so probably not in a position. We'd have to take that on notice, I'd imagine. Mr. CEO?
Mr. Mayor, if the resolution is endorsed, it'd go out to the market, and there would be quotes or submissions received, and the cost would be as the market dictates.
And look, can I say that I understand there will be a cost to it, to get an independent financial, an independent accounting firm, wherever we choose to get in to do this work for us. But, I think our reported deficit this year is around 4.56 million. It's a significant amount of money. We're looking at a $23 million depreciation expense. We're not talking here small coin. It's a significant amount of expenditure for council. And I think we really need to make sure that when we're bedding down $23 million worth of expenditure, that we have absolutely no reservations about the veracity of that information. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Speakers for or against? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just clarification, duplication of assets and options for unfunding depreciation there. What do we look like the unfunding depreciation? Are we looking towards our building assets? Where are we trying? And can you just clarify a little bit around the unfunding depreciation, what we're trying to achieve, for my own personal benefit there?
I'll certainly defer to our finance staff, but from my perspective, in terms of the motion, the intent is to identify assets that we are currently depreciating and making provision for in terms of future replacement. Where council would be of a mind that, look, we just wouldn't look to replace that asset at the end of its life. You know, if an asset, it could be buildings, there may be other assets in there, I'm not sure, but certainly buildings, I'd imagine, would be at the core of that. That would be a very big focus for that part of the process, yeah. General Manager, General Managers, broadly, did you want to add anything to that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Currently, when we talk about unfunding depreciation, we have about 3 million in roads and about 1.2 or 1.4, I think, in buildings. What we mean by the unfunding of that depreciation from like our finance side is that we don't actually allow the asset owner to spend that money, because while we're running a deficit, we don't have that money to spend. I think where the Mayor is going is more along what assets don't you want to replace, and if you're not going to replace them, do we need to depreciate them, which may decrease your depreciation, which will help your deficit. Unfunding depreciation, because we can't afford to fund it, is not going to help the deficit. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and I may have the terminology wrong there, Manager, in terms of unfunding depreciation. We're currently doing that, so we currently don't fund 3 million almost in roads, another 1.2, I think Selena's indicated there, so in excess of 4 million we're not currently funding. More about identifying assets that council would choose not to replace and therefore would choose to take off our depreciation schedule.
Yeah, so just one more question. So we're talking about assets that we're not looking to renew or something like that. So we're not talking about whole of life or anything like that, like extending out, changing. This is more directed into the roads, because 4 years ago I come from a situation, anyway, I won't go into it here, but I'm just some clarification around that 3 million that you're talking about. How, if the funded and unfunded depreciation around those roads, that's just, yeah, I just have some concerns around that.
I think that's a question for me, Councillor, in terms of what's my intent. My intent is to seek independent advice in relation to the legal requirements, into the scope of the legislation and regulations in relation to that, and what capacity does council have in relation to making decisions around asset values, effective life, and what implications that has on our depreciation schedule, whether there is a scope there for council to look at that or whether there isn't. There may well not be, but wanting to get a better understanding around that, and if there is a scope to do that, provide some options forward to council, because my concern is that we do absolutely need to maintain our sustainability ratio. However, we also have to cut our cloth to suit the amount of money we've got coming in revenue. It is no good our council continuing to run $4.5 million deficits or $3 million deficits each year for the next 3, 4, 5 years, because that will simply only erode our equity, our community equity. So I feel that we do have a responsibility to make sure that we are looking at our transport assets, our road assets, and look at our asset management program with General Manager Meehan over the course of the next 12 months. Aaron and I have had this conversation about the impact it's having on our deficit. We have $3 million worth of unfunded depreciation. To me, that's just giving rise to a liability that we can't ever extinguish. So to answer your question, I can see your concerns, but yes, wanting to certainly look at that and potentially, if able to reconsider that. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, I'm just not too sure whether this is to you, Mr Mayor, or through you to GM Meehan, but I was under the impression that we already had a comprehensive reevaluation already organised through our asset management plan that we've just started. Is that correct? Am I right?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, one of the proposals we'll be bringing to council for consideration in the operational plan would be to redevelop those strategies. So our intent this year was to look at the strategies for your assets around your service levels. If you're going to unfunded depreciation, the Mayor's right, it's a service level discussion around what you use. The purpose of what we've done with the asset management plans is to go through to try and understand the service and the cost implications, and also the community engagement that you may need in making that decision. Our proposal for next year for the operational plan would be to propose a comprehensive revaluation of the road assets for the 21-22 financial year. So that was our intent at this stage. Obviously, that's up to council to resolve through your. I think the op plan is up when the budget's up, CEO, or in around that time. But it's up to council ultimately what you wish to do.
Yeah, operational plan's always adopted before budget, so if all goes well, we'll have it to the roundabout either the May general meeting.
You raise a good point, Councillor Potter. There could be some duplication of effort here. If we're doing a revaluation, that is likely to be undertaken by, I think, we've had conversations about making that a multidisciplinary approach. So we have accounting input, external accountants as well as external engineers do that. Would that be the sort of approach you're thinking there, Aaron?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think to answer the question around the assets and the methodology, we would use a multidisciplinary approach. So the valuations are done through the engineering steering group, not the engineering, the asset steering group, which is a combined multidisciplinary approach between council and the asset owners. So we would be looking to take a multidisciplinary approach again externally this time. So if we're using an engineer for condition rating, our intention at this stage in discussions with Selena and her team is we would be looking for external financial advice as part of that process as well, just to make sure that everyone's satisfied that it's been done with the accounting standards. I will just add that the current valuation is audited by QAO, and we've provided that advice to council previously to make sure it's done with the accounting standards as well. So take on board the Mayor's comments and conversation. That's why we proposed some of those things in the op plan the other day, but ultimately we not to influence your debate, but that's just the answer to the councillor's questions.
Thanks, General Manager. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything to that in terms of we could have two processes running side by side here over the next 12 months? How can we blend that? Particularly, we've got other asset classes, we've got buildings and fleet and so forth. Is there any way we could try and tie all this in without duplicating what General Manager's doing?
Yeah, it's this one's a policy direction of council as far as informing next year's budget. If this resolution was endorsed today, well then we could look at it and come back with further. If it's not endorsed or it's held over pending the operational plan discussions, well then you could look at folding it all in together as part of the op plan. Really, Mr. Mayor, it's a bit tricky without having the operational plan complete at the moment. But certainly, yeah, there would be a possibility of listening that you could end up with very similar processes running beside each other.
Yeah, and certainly not wanting to have this work do a full revaluation on the value of the transport assets. I mean, you do the two hand in hand, the value and the effective life are all, at the end of the day, it's one process. But just coming back and reporting back to council as to what options may be available to address the potential deficits that we're potentially facing, and also, and now obviously that a big part of that will be the fact that our current $4.5 million deficit, of that 4.2 is depreciation. So it's a big chunk of it. Yeah. So this probably is a broader financial analysis of how can we work our way out of deficit. I would like to think that we could get ourselves out of deficit within the 22-23, 23-24 budgets, which are the last 2 years of our term, if possible. Yeah. Aaron, sorry, do you want to add to that?
Sorry, I've got too many mics. Just on the back of that comment, Mayor, we can look at, again, we're looking at proposals to council to build those asset strategies further over the next 12 months and to look at possible long-term financial planning strategies as part of an op plan proposal for the asset group this year. That is a possibility too, just on the back of the CEO's comments.
Well, I'm happy to lay this on the table for the next Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting to allow general managers, the senior executive team to confer on the matter, perhaps to come back with an option as to how we can do that broader financial analysis to provide council with recommendations about working ourselves out of deficit, without creating duplication around the transport assets revaluation that's happening? Because we've also got water assets being revalued at the moment as well, so we've got to consider that. Happy to do that if council has appetite for that. Yeah, Councillor Froelich, you've been waiting, sorry. I'll come back to you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I want to speak against your motion, Mayor. Councillor Shoemaker and I attended the Council Audit Committee meeting, which you were unable to attend. If you had been there, you would have seen the external audit plan and the strong audit that we are going through to be put through again this year. KPMG is our external auditors, and with the Queensland Audit Office, I believe, have got it covered. With our budget talks, we know we have valuations on our assets due to this year and every year in the turn. To me, this motion is a copy of our audit, and I believe we would be wasting ratepayers' money in something that we're already doing. We appointed an independent internal auditor, which was also discussed at the audit meeting, and with our external audit, would be best to do our valuations through, not spend money we don't need to. I believe we should work on with the Queensland Audit Office and go through the proper audit process. I am not in support of this motion.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Just in relation to your comments there, and please clarify me, General Manager, if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the Queensland Audit Office audit and the KPMG external audit is a compliance process to ensure that we are complying with the legislation and regulations and the accounting standards. I don't think the scope, as you're indicating, of their work is to provide financial advice to council as to how we can work our way out of deficit. General Manager, could you please clarify that?
I don't believe so within that scope. That I'll just refer to Selena, just in case I'm incorrect with that advice.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you are correct. They are a compliance thing to make sure that we have the correct useful lives, or that we're within a range. I think there's two separate issues here. One is you're talking about the roads comprehensive reval, and the other is we're talking about like building assets and what you may decide that you don't want to renew if it burnt down tomorrow. As far as your roads are concerned, I don't believe that you can just unfund them. Like, I mean, you just can't say I'm not going to depreciate a road. You can lengthen out the useful life, but then we come back to what level of condition of the road are you happy to accept complaints and your liabilities and stuff for? Whereas what so that's your first one. So your roads is getting the comprehensive reval. They're looking at bringing that forward next year. As far as your buildings and all of that, that's a separate issue where we would need to go through the asset register for all your buildings and your halls, and you'd need to go through and work out in that as a separate project as to what you would like to renew and what you wouldn't, which is not part of the QAO and KPMG external audit. That would be a council decision.
Thank you. So I'm taking you're confirming what I'm saying, that the QAO and the KPMG do not provide reports to council as part of their report as to how we can work our way out as options for getting out of deficit. Is that correct? Yes or no?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And it may, but as I said, look, I'm happy to lay this on the table, give our staff another month to have a look at it, come back with a recommendation to council. It really is, look, the intent here isn't just to focus on road. I'm certainly not wanting to unfund any road, absolutely not. Certainly not to want to depreciate any road. We can't do that anyway. It's about saying, at this point in time, there's a possibility that we're going to have 4 years worth of deficits. I gave a commitment to the community when I was elected that I would do everything I could possibly do to work council out of deficit. And I know that in 18-19, the only reason council was in deficit was because of the unfunded depreciation. Prior to that, council had been in surplus. So, for me, it's about honouring that commitment to the community, that do everything we can to work our way out of deficit, to get ourselves into a surplus, albeit a small surplus, just looking for some independent accounting analysis and advice as to how to do that body of work, to identify strategies, and clearly an important part of that will be to present to council options around asset valuation and depreciation of such. So that's really the intent. But as I said, happy to lay it on the table. Councillor Shoemaker, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the approach of laying this on the table. I have had some thoughts about what, a forensic financial review and analysis might look like for this council. I can hear your intent, and certainly Councillor Frolloff's very right. The way in which we've reshaped the Risk and Audit Committee, there's great opportunity maybe to have deeper and more meaningful conversations about aspects of our finances, definitely, with the new members and the structure that we've got there through that committee. So I welcome that opportunity. I do think we need to really think about the scope of what you're trying to achieve. I'm not against it. I do think knowledge is power, and the more we understand about our financial position, the better. I certainly also agree that depreciation is quite crippling, and when we're working through the budget, that seems to be a consistent thing that I myself, does make my stomach curdle a little. And I do welcome the opportunity to look to some strategies as to how we might be able to overcome that. I don't want to get hung up in deficits and surpluses. I want to get really meaningful, long-term, sound financial outcomes for our community. And so I see what you're trying to achieve. I do think we need just some more time to really unpack those motives and that intention, and really understand what that would look like for this council moving forward. So I'm not against it. I just think we need more time to understand exactly how we get the outcomes that we're aiming for here. And if I'm hearing you right, it's around that long-term financial sustainability, and what does that look like for council, and what kind of strategies and things might we be able to embrace. So I'd certainly welcome if we lay it on the table and bring back some more information. I think that would be a good approach. And I think it's timely based on the maturity of our asset management systems and things as well, that we start having these discussions, definitely.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to support the laying on the table, but I do think it's something we really need to not forget about, because and I know obviously it's not going to be forgotten about, but I think that this resolution is an alert to say, well, depreciation, it just it cripples councils, and I know some councils are they just simply cannot fund their depreciation, and I don't think that we can continue to run huge deficits. I think that it makes a massive difference, and I've noticed it makes a massive difference on the asset valuations, and every budget we traditionally get hit with some big whammy from the left field. We think we've balanced our books, and suddenly there's an asset valuation that changes all of the bottom line. It makes our council look like we're irresponsible, when it's actually just a tweak of, it could be the useful life of a road could change from 20 years to 16 years, and that can make a massive difference to roads across our region, and the value and what we have to fund as in depreciation. So I really think that we need to get this right. I think whether it be independent audit, or whether we lay it on the table and do it that way, or go through some other process, but to get the useful life of the roads, the buildings that we want to continue to fund, to keep and fund depreciation long term. There could be a whole heap of buildings that we just say, well, if they burnt down, we wouldn't replace them, and they may not necessarily be community buildings. They could be just council-owned buildings so I think that it really, really needs to be looked at carefully, because every single one of those buildings is a ratepayer dollar or a bottom line unfunded depreciation that makes us look like we are not balancing our books. So I just think it's the biggest issue in local government is the funding of depreciation. So I certainly support the Mayor in challenging what we do across the organisation with our assets and depreciation. So it's keen to support the Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Fully support leaving it on the table. Just to address a couple of concerns there of Councillor Duff and Manager Selina just touched on it. My real concern in 2016, Councillor, you know that we worked our butts off to get to where we are now in the roads. if we start extending the useful life of roads and all that, I really am concerned that we're going to go back to where we come from in 2016. So I'm just putting it out there that I'll advocate very strongly on the roads, and good to hear that the Mayor said that he won't, unfund depreciation on roads and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just saying that with that terminology of, extending useful life of roads and all that sort of stuff, that's where we've just come from. And we know how much a community like that. We've worked very hard over 4 years to get to where we are now. I just want to put it out there to be very aware that if we start extending life of roads and all that sort of stuff, it could take us back. That's all I wanted to say. But I'm happy to support the Mayor with leaving this totally on board with what you're trying to do, but I just think another month will give you more opportunity to work with staff and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, look, I've listened to all the comments around the table, and I think the sensible approach here is to give the officers, the senior executive team, an opportunity to go away, consider our options here. I think they clearly see what we're trying to achieve, or what I'm trying to achieve with this motion is to come forward with options around deficit mitigation, potentially getting out of deficit. What are our options? How can we actually achieve that? So, look, I'll move that the matter lay on the table until the April Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Procedural motion carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you all. It's now time to, I think we've attended all the agenda items, so I'll now I'll now look to close the meeting at 1:04 p.m. Again, thank you all. We've had a good, long meeting. It's been a strong conversation, and thank you, councils, thank you, staff, and members of the gallery, and have a lovely, enjoyable rest of day.